Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 12th, 2015 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. And we have our town administrator this time, so we're going to ask him to please read through the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and then add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And I'm not aware of any of those items. And then a public comment period. And then a one-day liquor license for the community center. And then a hearing on a new common victualer's license for Sherborn Sandwich Shop at 6:30. And then under boards, committees, and departmental business, we have consideration of a Recreation Commission appointment, and then consideration of hiker-biker trail crossing signs, and then update Sanger Street road closure from the police chief, consideration of agreement with Base Commerce with Nancy Hess Collector, and then under routine business, financial items with the finance director, consideration of MGL 32B sections 21 through 23 regarding employee health insurance. And at that time, the board can discuss whether they need to go into executive session or not, which is included at the end of the agenda. And then town administrator report and consideration of the appointment of town administrator as a monitoring agent for the announced sale of an affordable unit at Leland Farms, and community compact signing update that happened today, and then selectmen reports, meeting calendar, set the next meeting, and consideration of minutes.
Okay, very good. Anybody have anything to add or subtract from the agenda?
Just one thing. I'd given a memo to David. It's my fault. It's in the the agenda pack is item 9. It's actually relevant to item 7. I had asked the school committee for a summary of the current labor agreement effective from September 2011 to August 2014. This is the memo that they'd sent to us, the Dover Board of Selectmen, Dover Warrant Committee, Sherborn Advisory Committee, but it's just, it relates to item 7.
Okay.
It's a separate agenda item.
Okay, with that...
And it's not the contract.
Right. It's not the contract, it's a,
No,
summary.
it's a summary of the key financial terms.
Prior to the contract.
Okay.
I had an issue with regard to the Recreation Commission thing. Can't do the appointment.
Were we going to talk about that when we get to item 3, Paul, or we could leave it on the agenda and discuss it at that time and then reach a procedure if you want to do it that way? Okay, so do we have a motion and a second on the agenda?
So approved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, great, okay, good. Do we have anybody for public comment? Nobody. Wow, we're back on track. The license hearings are scheduled items, so that I think that would bring us then to the Recreation Commission item. Paul, I don't know if you want to discuss this. You want me to discuss it in terms of the procedural concerns about this item?
Leo Kavanaugh, the chair, was going to be here. I think they were just expecting it to be after 6:30.
So you want to hold it?
Well, you want to hold it, or I thought we weren't going to. Tell you what, Chief Thompson, you want to give your update on Sanger Road? Sure. Okay.
You could also do the one-day liquor license.
Oh, they don't have to be here on
Do
time?
that ahead.
Well, Chief Thompson walked all the way up to the table. Let's let him go.
You can go back if you want.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
So where would you like me to start? I forwarded some information to Diane, and I'm assuming that the board has copies of all the data that was collected.
We do. The copy quality wasn't great, but...
Well, it might help if you explain what it all means for us and for the public.
Well, I probably should defer to Selectman Colleen on how, the genesis of this idea, and then I can explain what I was tasked to do after this idea was brought forward. Does that make more sense?
Sure. Sean, you want your background?
Well, the background on the data and why we have data was the discussion of making sure we have some backup data prior to closing the road as far as traffic counts of what goes up and down Sanger, and also what traffic crosses Solon, so that we understand the impact after we close it and the traffic normalizes to some degree. How much that impacted Solon, because it no doubt will, but how much we don't know. So this is basically the baseline data for that in, I think, 4 different subsets: north-south on Sanger and east-west on Solon. And there's the first page is also some turning data that was just hand collected by Lieutenant Bento, I believe,
Correct.
on that's one consecutive week, right?
Correct.
But it's all morning, it's all
During-
morning rush hour.
During
Yes.
rush hour, the first 2 hours of rush hour. So what that shows is a lot of right turns, traffic traveling up Sanger and taking a right, which is, if you didn't know that, you don't drive through Sherborn at rush hour. That's cut through, because 27's a little bit slower through the stop sign than 16. So keep in mind, that plays into why the wait is so long coming in from Holliston, or coming down 16. Because on average, 100 to 150 cars take the 27. You get all the way to Sanger without hitting any traffic. You usually pass Sitco before you hit any traffic. You jump up and you get past probably 10 or 12 people. But for every car coming off of 27, that's a car on 16 waiting longer. Straight onto Maple is obvious. It's straight onto Maple. And then the left turn doesn't really exist, because it doesn't make sense to go up Sanger to take a left. If you do it, you shouldn't. It's not safe. If you're doing it during rush hour especially, you're just sitting in traffic to sit in traffic because it's gridlock. There's no chance if you get in an accident and everyone's going 1 mile an hour. It's like taking a left in New York City. Outside of peak traffic hours, taking a left there really isn't advisable anyway. It's arguably the most dangerous intersection, if not the second. So left-hand turns into oncoming traffic, statistically, I believe, are the highest likelihood of a cross collision.
Yeah, I would say that you're increasing your risk if you're going across traffic and making it left as opposed to going with the flow of traffic and making right. I mean, aside from, statistical information, it's kind of common sense, I would say.
Mm-hmm. We can't really put a no left turn sign there though, because there's no other option if you intended to go left.
No, in 2
Well,
mile
no, but the
detour.
bottom line is the left turn will go away
Yeah.
when if the road gets closed.
And by the way, I take credit for 3 or 4 of those left turns because I was checking in on Lieutenant Bento, so that increased that number for
Skewed the
few
data.
of those days.
Okay.
But in terms of assessing the big picture here, the purpose of this was to see what will happen if the street is closed. And if the
Exactly.
street's closed, people will now go down Sawin and take a right where they would go up Sanger and take a right. So all those rights would be moved to further
Well,
south,
no,
or
not all of them, because that was the point of the peak. If you're coming in from Medfield at 8 o'clock, if you leave your house at 8 o'clock in the morning, you want to get through downtown,
can't get there.
you know that if you come down 27, hook a left, go up Sanger, you're going to beat the 5 cars in front of you that went by Sitco. If we take Sanger out of the loop, you know that you're not actually going to beat those people if you go down Solon, because you're backtracking. There's probably 50 or 60 cars between Sanger and Solon that you're going to get behind. So it just normalizes out the traffic that's sitting there. It's actually going to probably help the people coming from 16 slightly by that many people that would have gone up, short shot it, and taken a right. You'll just sit on 27 and go straight through the stop sign.
So then we can say that not all of the traffic that's being diverted from the closure is going to go to affect that neighborhood at all.
Not all of it. What will happen is the people that had to get to Maple Street, coming from, say, Farm Road, will do Sawin, take a right, and go back up the hill. It'll take them a little longer.
And so what impact would that have on Sawin Street, for the people who live on Sawin Street?
I don't know. We'll know when we have data. It's going to sit still in the morning. But so is 16.
And it doesn't sit still now on Sawin?
I don't know how many people are going down Sawin.
No. Heather would be the subject matter expert. She lives
I
there.
would be the expert.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
right
not in the middle
now,
of Solomon, right.
right now you have no reason to go down Sawin to take a right on 16 when you know that 16 is sitting still.
No, you go down Solomon to take a left on 16.
Sure.
To head
Yeah,
down.
And you'll be able to do that.
anyone
No.
who's
It'll be
already
relatively
doing
safe
that,
because the traffic will be
Yeah.
sitting still.
They'd
there aren't
already
that
do
many
that, they're
people.
still gonna do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm
and
hoping
then,
this is gonna cause more people to take the right on Farm and then go down Lake and bypass down.
Well, there's a lot
That's
of
how
people
I
that just
do it.
do something different.
Right.
There isn't that many people headed that way at 7 in the morning.
I think it would be difficult to predict what people are going to do, but I would, again, common sense would suggest that people that are familiar with the area may even make the right before they approach downtown Sherborn and take the back roads.
Or just not come through Sherborn.
So when you
Take
say we'll
Solomon
have,
Way.
I
So-
live on Solomon, I don't do either of the things that happen. I go Farm to Lake and bypass downtown completely. So
I live on Butler Street and I do the same.
Yeah, so I think it's,
I do the same
it's
too.
gonna be interesting, but who knows what's gonna happen.
Right.
And there certainly is traffic during peak rush hour that is traveling west on Sound. And that's what the data is showing. If you look at, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., let's say, there's roughly 100 and average of 100 cars per hour, roughly.
And I don't know where they're coming from. They're not Sherborn residents.
But the cars that are coming from Maple Street and want to go to 27,
Take a right.
they will end up taking a right, but are there a lot of them by these counts?
so you're talking about southbound or eastbound from Maple
South.
Street. Now they go past the library. What they'd have to do is take a right and go
Oh.
Then
down,
they have to go
take a
left.
left. Yeah.
And
That's
that
south
left
on
turn
Center.
is
But-
going to be very difficult because there's going to be all the cars going northbound on 16, and then there are going to be cars wanting to cut through them to take left.
The good thing is they're not moving. The cars on 16 are sitting still. It's easy to get through.
The ones heading west.
One's headed east.
I see what you're saying. It's hard. It's easy to
You
turn.
gotta
it's
take a
easy to
right out of
turn through
Maple
them.
and then take a left onto Sawin.
Yeah. Okay.
And all you gotta do is wait for someone to leave you a break because they're not moving. They're not now and they won't be.
So would it make sense to have like a police officer there?
Well, we're gonna give them the sign for at least a week or so
Yeah,
to let them know. Because
Yeah.
these are the people, they do it routinely. They do it every day.
Yeah. I thought when we had discussed this at the beginning of this, that we had agreed to collect the data, look at what we got for numbers, and we're going to put up the signboards for a few weeks to alert persons that are going to utilize 16 and 27, so they're aware that we're going to be shutting Sanger Street down. And then on top of that, I recall that Mark had inquired about getting some true data when there's inclement weather. So we kind of try to slow us down a little bit so we get closer to snowfall. And I think we've collected enough data to know what kind of numbers we're looking at. So I think the next logical step is to put the signage up for a few weeks and shut the road down. And see what,
And the idea was to do a shutdown and evaluate.
correct.
Yeah.
And I think you made it very clear, Mike, that if there were any major issues that the board obviously has the authority to say, okay, let's end this test.
I mean, that would be my preference to at least evaluate it.
The vote actually, immediately, we had the authority.
Or, yeah,
Myself, you, and Ed have the authority to kind of kill it midday
yeah.
if there's a safety issue.
I did want to comment for the board. When we had a department head meeting last week. Our librarian was very complimentary toward the board about being forward-thinking and, having some concern for the upcoming library project. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I just want to add one thing to the point that Sean was making. The large number of people turning right on Washington, representing people coming up from Medfield, trying to save a few minutes. It's actually a larger number than that, because I've seen people that are very aggressive and go through the Unitarian parking lot. They don't even make it up to the stop sign. They're cutting through in front, the front end of the church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, comments from the public, Nancy.
A couple of things. One, sometimes the traffic is stopped back to our house on South Main Street. And when you say it's crazy to take a left turn here, the traffic is stopped. It's probably the best to make a left turn the whole day when the traffic is stopped and let get through. I have a question. Is this stoppage going to be before the driveway to the Unitarian Church? Is the traffic going to be stopped before coming up the hill, before the Unitarian Church?
Yeah, below it.
Below it. So that is going to force all of the people who use that to come up to that intersection. You're going to have more traffic at that intersection because you have a nursery school that comes in the morning that unloads there. On Wednesdays, you have the Goodest New Shop where people are coming from all directions to go and get into that driveway to go in Unitarian Church. You also have scouting groups that use the community center as well as Friday night at the movies. Now, all of those people, in order to access that area, are going to have to come through that intersection where they used to be able to come up and go back out without ever having to go into that intersection. So that will be a factor. When you say nobody's going to have to make a left turn, anybody who lives down there that comes out after leaving the activity group is going to have to come onto that intersection and either cross, turn, or whatever. So, I think it's a little more complex. And as I said at the last time, before you had this posted, to me, I understand wanting to study and things, but when something happens where you have to close the road, you close the road and you figure out alternatives. This whole project is going to take a long time. It's going to be an inconvenience for people, and it's going to be an aggravation. I don't understand the logic in closing, unless you're just talking about a couple of days of closing this to study it. I don't understand the logic in exacerbating the problem and increasing the time period where people are made to do differently. This is a commuter route to work. And I understand that people do come up here to try to not do the 27 stop sign, but if you live where I live, you understand why they do that. So I just want you to consider that. Unless you have a broader plan, I know the planning board has talked about closing that road permanently. I think the town ought to have some input on that and not just have that be a basic decision, because you can't say that that's for safety reasons when the big safety issue is the people coming out of Maple Street. And that's where I sit in that office below here with the window there. I'm often the person who calls the police department when the crashes happen. And most of the time it's people involved coming out of Maple Street. So I just would like you to give some serious thought as to the maybe unintended consequences of extending the period of time that people are really going to be inconvenienced by the closure of that road. And the whole idea of the issue with the people who use the area across the street. And in fact, it's my understanding the library is going to try to be over there during construction, which means everybody using the library is also going to have to come and go by it. So, my 2 cents worth. I know that there's a lot of people who are supporting this, but I'd like you to think a little bit on the other side of it and see if you don't see there's some merit to not extending the period of time that you're going to have to make this kind of inconvenience. Thank you.
So, if I could make a comment. 90% of your argument was about that intersection. We could pick the Jersey barriers up, put them on the other side of the Unitarian entrance, and make everyone come from the lower end. But that's not going to tell us anything about what happens during construction. because during construction, the library is going to block that road. So we're trying to do a test of real circumstances of what will happen. Now, you and I will have to agree to disagree, because you're convinced it's never going to work. I'm convinced that the data might show that we're safer without the road.
Do you have an estimate of time that you're going to run this test?
I think anything less than a month doesn't let it shake out. The first week is a wash, because people have no idea what they're doing. The second week, they might figure it out. The third week, they might figure out a shortcut to not even come through town. So you don't know what the net effect is till you do it. And the unintended consequences, you have no idea. It might make Woodland Street and Goulding safer. It might make it more dangerous. Who knows? People might just say, the heck with Sherborn. It's gridlock. I'm not coming there. And,
I think they would have done that a long time ago if they could.
well, sometimes you got to push them a little harder.
You know, one thing with Waze and all these apps now that tell you the quickest way to places, you find yourself going in some very strange places, and I suspect that once that information makes its way into the brains of those directional apps, they may be rerouting people around this problem, you know, pretty seamlessly. Who knows? I mean, it certainly seems to have improved some traffic patterns other places. Yes, Chris?
Have you guys ever done a quick snapshot study of traffic flow down Solon versus traffic flow down Sanger to understand, is there a big differential in that?
Yeah, we have all that data collected if you want to take a look at it.
Is there a big difference, or?
Numbers-wise, volume-wise, it's probably I'm looking at Sanger Street North between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. On a Wednesday, pick a Wednesday. 180 cars 6 a.m., 230 cars 7 a.m., 254 cars, or I shouldn't say 254 vehicles 8 a.m., 135 9 a.m. Sowon Street West, 6 a.m. 85 vehicles, 7 a.m. 108 vehicles, 8 a.m. 136 vehicles, 9 a.m. 99 vehicles.
So, which is sort of ironic that rush hour, you can't really get across it. I mean, you're better off making a right and then making a left if you want to go to Maple. Because I've done it.
Thanks for pointing that out.
But back to the story. Nancy brought up some good points. Me sort of representing community center. I don't think it's the end of the world as long as there's some clear directions. Like, big events like weddings and stuff, you're only here once, you give them one entrance, what's the big deal? Friday night movies, giving one entrance, I don't think it's the end of the world. If you start thinking about where's the flow of traffic coming from to an event like that, they're coming from every direction. So some are going to make a right, some are going to make a left. I mean, there's so many different ways to get in. So I don't see any of that as a big problem for us. Just being notified of timing and so we can be aware of that would be probably the most important thing.
Just a legal question, Chris. Do you have the right to access your property through the parking lot on the other side of the church? Or is your access limited to...
No, there's no such thing. I mean, basically, the church gives us permission to come in and use the parking lot, because that's the only way you can get to the building.
So they have no problem with you with traffic to and from your site going through past the front of the church?
It's a good question that we would definitely have to go check with them just to be sure. I think people are probably going that way anyhow without us even knowing. The big issue is that's why we need insurance against the church for any kind of event, because people are using their parking lot to get to our building. As far as I know, we're landlocked.
You'll still be able to exit as it is.
After the road is closed?
Yeah. You just won't be able to go down the hill.
You go one direction.
But you can go
You can
right
come back out the
west
parking lot as it is.
and go west?
Go left or right. there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You just couldn't come from the lower end of Sanger. We're not going to close the intersection, we're just closing the road in the middle. You'll still be able to do that.
But if you went right, if you went left from, you go down the parking road to Sanger and go left, where can you go to? The road's going to be closed.
No. I mean, if you pull up to the community center, you'll be able to drop someone off, turn around, and go back down the entrance that you came in, just as you can now. Once you get to Sanger, you'll have to take a right. Yeah, you'll have a barrier next to you.
Yeah.
And back out onto Washington, just as if the road wasn't closed. Or you can shoot through the Unitarian. We don't want to
So it's
force
gonna be
people through the
open
Unitarian.
past-
That's not fair to them.
It's going to be open past their entrance.
Yeah. Basically
Well, that's the
below.
answer. Okay. I thought you were going to close both ends of the street.
No. Just one barrier in the middle.
Some
because
kind of divider, yeah, just south of the parking across from the library on Sanger. So that strip of parking there's, the barrier go just south of that.
Okay, so they're all set then. People can
Yes,
continue to get
they
their
can still do
access.
exactly what they do. They just can't come from South Main. They have to
go around.
go around.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, anybody else on this before we wrap it up? Pat?
Just another reference data, when that traffic on Route 16 is backed up in the morning from 8:30 to 9, it backs up all the way to Old Orchard Road.
Okay, great.
I've sat in it.
All right, thanks everybody for all the input. Thank you, Chief. We don't have a decision to make on this, or do we at this point? It's just more of the same?
What's the timeline? So you're going
Oh.
to do the signs for a while, and then when is this closure going to take place?
I think we should do the sign for a week in either direction and then close it,
So you mean starting now, roughly?
starting right now. They should go put the sign out in one direction on Sanger,
Yeah.
wait a week, and then turn it the other way.
Well, we have, just so you know, we have 2 signboards that we can utilize, so we can put them on both sides. And I thought we had discussed maybe doing that for 2 weeks, but if the board's okay with 1 week, that's fine.
I didn't know you had to.
Did we vote the closure or the study the last meeting?
Voted the study.
The study on the, so we do need to vote.
No, we definitely voted the closure. The study doesn't
the
exist
closure.
until we close the road.
The closure.
Closure was part of the study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. We didn't
Yeah,
vote to close it indefinitely.
No.
Yet.
You didn't vote a permanent closure.
That's right.
So I'll work with Ed Wagner, and we'll get the signage out tomorrow morning, and we'll start notifying,
A week or two.
and then I'll
We-
make it.
2 weeks makes sense to me, but I defer to the chief. Just give me.
Yeah,
I don't think it matters.
and again, I did listen to Mark Brand. He made a great point about inclement weather, and I'd like to kind of push it out a little bit,
Why
so.
don't you come back at our next meeting and see how it's going?
Okay.
Decide whether or not you want to continue it,
We can do that.
That's not my car.
unless you pulled the plug earlier.
Continue the closure.
Yeah.
We will have just closed it.
2 weeks from
If
now.
we wait 2 weeks.
Yeah, actually, we'll meet right
Essentially-
Oh,
before
that's
we
right,
vote.
you have 2 weeks to sign.
Today is Thanksgiving.
Never mind.
So just so we're clear, we're going to do 1 week, or do you want to do 2 weeks?
Why don't you do it through the Thanksgiving weekend and then start that next week?
Okay.
Notify through Thanksgiving,
What do you think?
and then close it right after Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. We'll do that.
See what happens.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right.
You want to go back to that liquor license?
Go back to
You got a
the
hearing at 6:30.
agenda. Yeah, we had a 6:30 hearing, and we've got a one-day liquor license. Can we take care of the one-day liquor license quickly? Does anybody have any issues with that? And then we'll get to the vitulers license. So we've got a one-day liquor license for a private event at the Sherborn Community Center, December 12th, 6:30 to 11:30. We've got a form that has been signed off by the police and by the fire department, police with a condition of 1 detail officer. We've got a liability insurance policy.
Which does include the town of Sherborn this time.
It does or does not?
It does.
Okay.
And the Unitarian Church.
Yeah.
Let's see. Show me where that is, because...
Wait on, in the remarks.
Description of operations.
Okay. All right. Additional insurance.
Yes, the
Got
additional
it.
insurance.
Yep, good. Okay. So anybody have any comments, questions?
I move to approve a one-day liquor license for December 12th, 2015 to Robert Schumann as Zaftig's Delicatessen.
I think it's the 5th.
The motion reads December the 12th.
The liquor license reads the 5th, but you're right, the motion that is in our package for some reason says the 12th, so I don't know why that is. And this license is dated the 12th of November, but it's December 5th, so I think we're good.
So the motion is a liquor license for December 5th.
Yep.
I have my usual objection to the detail officer, the portion that relates to internal something, that's a word I can't read. Because this is a private party.
It says traffic and internal security.
He did no traffic.
Yeah, traffic I'm okay with, the internal security, it's a private party. In a privatized building. Doesn't meet legal standards.
Although this applicant recognized that somewhere in the communications, he noted that he understood that one would be required.
Just because something's imposed on somebody does not mean that it meets legal standards.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, opposed? And no abstentions, 4-1. Okay, great. You can sign this. Okay, now we've got Mr. Linden with a vitulers license hearing, and I'll read the announcement. The Sherborn Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 12, 2015 at 6:30 PM in the Town Hall with regards to the common vitulers license application for the Sherborn Sandwich Shop, 11 South Main Street. Oral and written comments are invited. And that was advertised, correct, David?
Yes.
Okay, properly advertised, and we have the backup information in our packages, and so, Rick, would you like to tell us what you're doing with the sandwich shop?
What we're trying to do is, first of all...
If you don't mind sitting at the table so folks can hear you, okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, great, yeah, just sit up at that table with the mic. Thank you.
Hi. The background of this is that I assume most people here know that the building in which the sandwich shop is housed was sold a few months ago, and that precipitated the previous operator, Mr. Wilson, to take another position somewhere else, a salaried position. And quite short notice. The last Sunday in December was the last time he was really, sorry, September was the last time he was really full-time operator of the establishment. We have been working together with the new landlord, who has rather ambitious plans to renovate both the inside and the outside of the building. Just how far that's going to go. He would like to see the sandwich shop operation succeed. We would like to upgrade it. He's proposing to put quite a lot of money in there to improve it. I've got Mrs. McAleen here, who is certified in restaurant management. She's very talented. Because I certainly, it's not my thing, as I think you're all aware. Things are moving along. We would hope to make it a much better place than than it is. And it's funny, Bob Delaney, former selectman, is referred to it as the second town hall, because the SOS group, or whatever they call themselves, they meet down there. Some other groups meet down there, and people who are not subject to the open meeting law, and they can sit for an hour or whatever, and talk. And there really isn't another place to do that. They can't do it at CNL. It's just not set up for that. And it's in a sense a community resource, and we certainly want to preserve that. If anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And Rick, did you have to go to the planning board or anything for any of these changes, or is it
We
just a
had to go to
continuation?
we had to go to the Board of Health, went through two inspections. We got a permit from them. It's basically, I guess, a routine thing. They had to go to Carol Marple, the town clerk, to get certificate operation to operate a business in town. I mean, that's anybody who's doing that has to do that. There's you guys. There's been a fire department and building department inspection, and that went okay. In fact, they were very impressed that accumulation of God knows what was in storage there has been. They took 2 truckloads of stuff out of there. I thank Sonia for managing that. So it's anybody who goes down there, everybody who walks in notices that the place is neater and cleaner and just more efficient.
That's great.
We've just started.
Any other questions up here?
I had the pleasure to serve with Rick on the advisory committee for 3 years, and thrilled to see your name on the application, although you didn't once bring sandwiches to any of our advisory committee meetings, so I'm not, jury's out on that, but I suspect we should look
I was
at you.
never asked. I wasn't involved with that. So.
Yeah, I've had occasion to work with Rick too, and I can vouch for him and in support of this, depending on what the public reaction is, but I can vouch for him myself too.
Anybody else want to vouch for Rick or otherwise? Okay.
Rick on school committee.
That is true.
We've all worked with Rick on one thing or another.
Exactly.
Rick has given a lot to this town, and continues to with this project. Kitty?
And I'll just say, as a general public, I applaud him for wanting to carry on this spot. It's a great place for people to meet, and I don't care what age you are.
That's great. Good. So do we have a motion to
Move
do
to
whatever we're
approve.
supposed to do here?
To issue a common victualer's license.
Okay. And the license is in the name of Richard Linden, DBA, the Sherborn Sandwich Shop, I guess.
Second.
Okay. Great. Any further discussion up here? Okay. All in favor? Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Rick.
So when are you going to be open for business?
They are.
Open now. Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So the next item on this agenda, as we sign that license, is the Recreation Commission appointment. And you've got the commission here, I guess, right now. We had a look at this earlier in terms of the procedures, and so typically the way we fill appointments would be to have them brought to us at a meeting, which unfortunately didn't happen with this one. I think you communicated with David, but the board itself never learned of this until this week. And then we would let the public know that there was a vacancy and ask people to apply, and typically we would leave that open for 30 days. I think in this case, you've already done all the legwork. You've found somebody to fill that position. I'd like the sense of the board on this, I guess. I mean, one thought would be to stick to our practice, but shorten the time, and say at our next meeting we would make the appointment. I guess the other question is whether the commission itself has to have a role in the vote with this or not. And we had looked at the statute, and without a formal notice, it devolves to the selectmen to do the appointment. So I think we could just appoint them at the meeting at, what is it, when are we meeting next?
4th.
24th, if that's what the board wants to do. And at this point, there's only one candidate for that position anyway. But I'd be interested in hearing what others have to say about this.
What happened to Sean?
He had to step up for a phone call.
Okay. There's a statute, and unfortunately, we need to follow the statute. And because of that, we can't make the appointment tonight. What our practice has been is that the chair, after being notified by the board or commission involved, is supposed to make a public declaration that the spot is open and applications are due at a certain time, whatever time you pick, I guess.
We've done that through 30 days, I think, has
30
been your
days.
preference, Paul, and other ones.
And then there's supposed to be a notice from the selectmen in the Dover Sherborn Press. And then when the applications come in, this is what the procedure is. When the applications, after the applications come in, then it's put on the agenda, and we're required to give you written notice 7 days in advance of the time that we're going to vote on it. 7 days is statutory. It can't be 3 days, it can't be 2 days, it can't be 5 days. It has to be 7 days. And so that's pretty much the procedure we're supposed to follow. This isn't about who the applicant is. It isn't about what the job is. It's not even about how much the job pays, which is nothing. It's about the process, the transparency of government, making sure that everybody has equal opportunity for any position. We have no reason to believe anybody else will apply for the position, but it should be formally open to the entire community for a period of time.
Can I
Yeah, I will, but David had an explanation of something, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that early on, after the resignation happened, Leo gave me a call, and that was what I was accepting as the notice.
I know, and
to the
unfortunately,
selectman's
the
office.
statute doesn't say.
Literally, it says the member shall provide written notice, and if they don't, then the selectman can make that appointment. And that's what I didn't even understand that part till just before the meeting with Paul. So the issue is the 7 days notice of the actual selectman's vote to make the appointment. I think that the Rec Commission has done a great job getting the word out and trying as hard as they can to make the public notice. Yeah, beyond 30 days. So really the one thing that I'm concerned about is just that the agenda was posted on Monday, so we only have 3 days notice where the statute requires that.
I think you should give the notice. I mean, I thought we had procedures for all these appointments that we follow, but it sounds like somehow this one didn't get.
I look
follow.
back through, and this is the third time in 4 years that this has come up, and each time there's been a town council involvement with some interpretation on one piece of this.
All right, well, we should try to do it so we can do it on our own, just according to the statute. But David, if you would advertise this or at least announce it for our next meeting, we could vote at the next meeting, correct?
If we placed it in the Dover Sherborn Press for next Thursday, and then you took the vote on the 24th, you would meet all of your...
Well, next Thursday is not
The 19th.
7 days before the 24th, so you'd have to advertise it someplace
No,
else.
the
right?
notice doesn't say, it's not a printed notice in the paper.
Oh, I see. Okay, different from the advertisement. What are we advertising?
This
Just the
suffices
availability?
as the 7-day notice.
Okay.
But for the advertisement that we didn't do in the paper, we didn't send them a press release. I didn't advise the commission to send one, so I know that they didn't.
I think you were gonna, you're gonna address what you did for the.
Yeah, I mean, we were given some guidelines, and
Okay.
they seem to cover a lot of what Paul outlined. So really, I'd like to find out a little bit more, because right now we're a little confused. A lot of what Paul just mentioned, we've done.
Good.
And so I think that's what we kind of want to find out.
Well, there's just three things that need to be done. First thing is, it's on our chair to announce that there's a vacancy on the commission.
Which is what tonight accomplishes.
At a Board of Selectmen meeting.
Right. And to set a time for people to apply.
And that's been a policy, that is not a statute. That's been a practice that we've followed, that we agreed on as a board last year, that the board could certainly waive as a group if it wanted to, but since we have this other issue, I think we probably just should follow it. And tonight serves as an announcement of the availability, and I guess the idea would be if someone were interested, they would contact David before our next meeting. And we know we have one person interested already.
The Recreation Commission did publicly announce that
Understood.
more than 30 days ago.
Yeah, but you're not on television. and all
Okay,
this.
maybe that's where the clarification.
Understood, and it's
Multiple online resources. And
we're not being critical in any way of what you guys did. Just so you know, I think this is one where we, as a collectively, dropped the ball. Didn't get the administrative stuff right.
And then the second step was, if you put in to the Dover Sherborn Press, the community notes, just that there's this vacancy and that the applications come in by our next meeting, which is November
24th, right there.
24th. And then the third would be to send for the town administrator or the chair to send to the Recreation Commission a document that says that on whatever date you decide as chair,
The 24th, which was just said.
that's going to be when the appointment's going to be made.
And that would be
It's
David.
just a stat-
David
it's-
would do that.
we
That's
just
the
have to
statutory piece.
Sorry to sound like a lawyer, but I am a
I
lawyer.
was
So.
I thought when you mentioned the intent that we might have already covered some of the ground to satisfy the statute. If you're saying
But we have to do it.
The town doesn't have to do it, it has to be the select. Because the town, like, we're elected officials of the town.
Understood.
And
Yes.
we have made these announcements, but it has to be the statute
Selectmen.
says that the
The-
selectmen have to do it.
The statutory part is only the notice from us to you of when it comes on the agenda. The other part is a practice
Well,
that
a
the board
notice
has
from
had.
them to us too, which they never did.
Well, yeah, they did it informally, and that's been part of the
Has to
problem,
be
so.
in writing, yeah.
So give David, just, send David an email or whatever you did to tell him that there's a vacancy. We're announcing tonight that there's a vacancy. You're going to put it in the paper, David. Anybody who's out there in the public who wants to be on the Recreation Commission for a period of time, who hasn't already advised us that they want to do that, should tell David. And at our meeting on the 24th, we will meet to appoint the commissioner. We'll put that on the agenda.
That, if I could just to supplement that, the statute says that the appointment will only be until the next election.
I think they understand.
So
yeah. It was an interim
they
appointment,
may
is how
know
it's
that, but the
advertised.
public,
Yeah.
as part of the announcement, if somebody wants to come forward and take this on, it's only until May of 2016.
Okay, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
What role does the commission need to play on the 24th for the scheduling? Do we have to even be here?
No.
We just have to provide you notice that we're going to take the vote on the 24th.
And it's not a vote, because at one time we thought there was a face-to-face vote for the commission and the...
It would be, the statute says that if within 30 days of the resignation, if you provide written notice to the board, then you and we vote together. If within that 30 days you do not send a written notice, you waive your right to participate.
Okay.
It's just a statute. Sorry to
So the written
sound so
notice saying
technical.
that there was a resignation, so we
Yes.
did do that.
That came from the town clerk.
Didn't come
The
from the
individual who
Recreation
resigned,
Commission.
and then it went to the selectmen. But what we're doing is because we understand that there could be a problem with people attending on the 24th, that if you take this literally, if you didn't provide that specific written notice to the Board of Selectmen, they can take the vote without you there. So knowing who your recommended candidate is, you wouldn't have to be there because of that translation.
All right, yeah, sorry, I'm sure this is confusing and seems terribly bureaucratic, which I guess it is, but we're kind of guided by the statute.
Well, there's a public purpose behind it, which is to provide open government, transparency, anybody has an opportunity to apply, all those kinds of public policy reasons.
And I think they had the intent of doing that.
Oh, I'm not saying that there was not an intent to do this.
No, it's my fault, because when we talked, I advised them, you know, yeah, you guys go out and market that way. So
There's no fault here. This technical stuff, you gotta be a lawyer to figure it all out.
While we're here, do you all have any questions about our interim candidate?
We all know him. I'm very fond of him.
The only downside is they shoot basketball, but I don't hold that against them, so.
Yeah, I know, I mean, I think, I don't see any issues that way.
Great choice.
can we point
Very
out?
nice of them to step forward.
Yeah, can we point out that nobody else stepped forward?
So it's not a tsunami of responses. But not even to downplay that.
Right.
Michael's experience would be hugely better. We're moving forward with some very significant capital projects sponsored by Sherborn Selectmen, funded by Sherborn. Hugely better.
Great, good. And Nancy, you have a comment?
I have a question, well, I guess sort of. Nowhere here have you said, this statute applies to positions that are of elected bodies, right? This is-
Elected bodies, elected commissions or boards.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we've got hiker biker trail crossing sign. Is this you, are you doing, you're doing this, Chris is doing it, okay.
Yeah, he was telling me.
Great.
How you doing? Chris Tallman with the Sherborn Forest and Trail Association. We were looking to put up a couple signs on a few of the busier roads to let people know that people are crossing on the trails. We've had a couple people with close calls with cars, and some of it is the cars just don't know there's a trail crossing there. So we've gotten funding to pay for the signs. We talked to Traffic Safety Committee and Ed Wagner about putting them in, but we want to get permission from you guys to install a recreational trail crossing sign, sort of the yellow diamond shape, and then underneath it, a horse, hiker, biker, to let people know that that could be crossing in front of them. There's an option for a distance. You can do 500 feet ahead if you wanted to do that. The Bay Circuit Trail Alliance, which comes through town, is managed by the Appalachian Mountain Club, and they've offered help pay for this as well. So we had said if they wanted to put their own little sign on the post, maybe that would be okay, but I'd ask. I didn't know if you had questions for me about locations. We're looking at 27, 16, and Farm Road are sort of the three busy roads. And I think that covers the basic idea. There's some pictures in there. I have color ones if that helps.
I have a question, but it's for Sean, actually, as you're our traffic expert. What do you think?
I actually voted on this at traffic safety about a year ago.
Which
Right.
which way did you vote?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I wouldn't bother with the 500 feet. I don't think people really realize how far 500 feet is when they're traveling at 40 miles an hour.
Right.
Well, since you've stalled out the traffic completely anyway, they'll fall asleep.
Exactly.
Are you consulting or going to consult with the chief about sight lines just to make sure where these things are placed, they're not harming a driveway or somebody else who's trying to see past wherever these signs are?
I was going to leave some of the sign installation exact location, if it didn't have to be 500 feet, up to the police chief and Ed Wagner, because they both said that they'd help out with that. But if it has to be 500 feet, then we'll find the 500 foot and then see what sort of issues it is. Otherwise, we can adjust.
Yeah, I think we had a recommendation that it didn't have to be 500 feet
Right.
unless
Not
somebody's...
even
That was
close
my
to-
preference as
Because
well.
it was a question in there about whether or not, I don't even think you should,
Well, I'm going to go with Sean. So unless the chief, either our blue chief or our green chief, or our red chief, not to exclude anybody, unless they have an objection.
Not at all, no.
So I move to approve. As
What,
recommended.
the question also was whether we would approve the Appalachian, was it AMC signs or Appalachian Trail or
The
Bay Circuit
Bay-
signs?
Bay Circuit Trail, there's a picture in there of what the
Okay.
of what it looks like. It's a little logo. It looks like the Massachusetts with a little circle going around the Boston.
Yeah, they've had it in other towns.
Yeah, so that's the
Yeah,
new
Stand for it.
that's the new trail marker we're putting up across town. It was those just simple white marks.
Yeah.
When the AMC got involved, there's a little more funding, so they're putting in ones with a logo and an arrow. And so we thought maybe one of those at the sign, no arrows on it, just a little logo. But it just sort of to advertise we've got this resource in town and let people know to be a little careful. We've got a few equestrian crossing signs around town as well. But we like the idea of the sort of hiker, biker, horse to let people know any of the three could be.
And you're recommending that, right?
Yes.
And Sean, you're okay with that?
I am. I will. My recollection was the Traffic Safety Committee was unanimous on that. I mean, as you know, they worked for years on different horse signs. They didn't get too many, but these are pretty heavily used trails.
So can I amend the motion to include both signs? The crossing signs and the trail signs?
Yeah, the Bay Circuit Trail.
Include the Bay Circuit logo? Okay.
Yeah.
I would appreciate doing that since they're helping pay for it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to let them advertise a little.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
I'll
Can I ask
second.
you a question?
Sure.
Do we have any data on accidents or close calls at these trail crossings?
I could get data that identifies an exact address if it's a straightaway. It wouldn't necessarily tell you that it's at a crossing where we've got a path. That makes sense to you.
I think that's part of the problem. One of these crossings on Route 16 is, well, the former pipeline.
Yeah.
It's a really weird section of 16. Before you get to the new Pine Hill Access Road, it's, I don't even know what the address would be. So if there was a close call, I mean, it's blind
Well,
around the
here's
corner.
my problem is a personal thing, is that, I mean, we just keep putting signs up. Society, and we don't seem to ever take any of them down. And, pretty soon you get a forest of signs, and people don't pay attention to them because there's just too many signs to read. So, unless this is really solving a problem that we know exists rather than maybe just impressions, I think I'm going to probably vote against it. Although I'm sure I'll be in the minority.
I have one comment to that. During my years, which weren't that many on traffic safety, I did serve with the group of individuals that most of which have been on for a couple of decades. And so they were on during the years of the tearing down of a lot of signs. I don't know. You guys probably remember how many speed limit signs were all over town that weren't enforceable. There was signs everywhere. And they spent the better part of 10 years taking a lot down. There was dangerous curve signs at every corner. There was twice as many streetlights as there were in town. And so they're pretty diligent on making sure we don't just throw signs up.
Streetlights?
There were a lot, well, not,
Oh, you mean-
not signal.
Oh, okay.
No, just lights. I think there's
I
about
thought you
half
were
as,
only
no,
one light town.
you always have it, and a blinking.
Mark, I actually have a different take. I think putting up the signs lets people know that we're hiker, biker, horse friendly and that there are trails in town. Should be pretty obvious to anyone, but I have no problem with that as signage.
I'm sensitive. I think that's a laudable thing, identifying the trails better, but I don't think this does that.
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well, I'm going to go with Sean's judgment. So the motion that I made was to approve basically all the signs without requiring 500 feet.
I would second that, and I would also say I think it just raises awareness, which is a good thing, both for the reasons Chuck was talking about, and also because I do think there are people who, they're crossing the trail, they've got little kids with them, or they're, maybe in a hiker's, haze or something, kind of relaxed, and somebody speeding along, can
What kind of
create
age
a
is that, Mr. Jones?
relaxed. You guys are up in the wrong place with this. But, so the idea would be that people will see this, there'll be more where they'll slow down. I'm surprised at you, Chief, really.
And one more comment to that. It's 3 locations, right?
We proposed the 3 busy roads, and then one of the discussions at the Traffic Safety Committee was whether we should slowly convert some of the other existing signs so they're all standardized, which we can talk about. But these three busier roads were the sort of three that we've been told there have been close calls from people on horse hiking and biking. So
What are the
So
what are the other signs that you're talking about?
there's a bunch of equestrian crossing signs, horse crossing signs. There's a couple trail crossing signs around town. And we wanted to make it a little more universal, a recreational trail crossing with the hiker, biker, horse underneath. So it sort of references the three most common uses out there rather than just a horse or just a hiker. So I don't know if that's of interest. We could look into that longer term, changing things around. One had been on the aqueduct, but that was voted to not be made public access. So we pulled those locations when that got voted down.
And so I just wanted to point out that it's only three of,
Yeah.
there must be 100 different crossings, especially the base, the pipeline crosses all over town, but we're only talking about three of the major crossings. So there isn't signs, we're not talking about adding signs to.
The Bay Circuit Trail also is on Whitney Street, crosses Western Ave, Oldfield Drive, and Dexter, and then crosses Brush Hill Road, Perry. There's a side trails down to Hunting. It crosses 27 and 16, so North Main and Elliott, and then goes behind the school, crosses Farm, and eventually goes down by Lake and Forest, talking into Rocky Narrows, and then you can actually cross 27 South Main to get into Medfield. Or when we run events for trail pace events, which is for hikers and bikers, or the Hunter Pace, which just happened. We have people standing out on the side of the road to stop everybody, make sure there's no cars coming, and let people go. But I think we had 7 road crossings for the Hunter Pace last weekend. And we just had people out there to stop because you don't normally need a sign on Hollis Street. It'd be sort of silly to have one there. But there's trails that cross all over the place. We have a detailed map of everything in town if it's of interest to you guys.
We should be proud of the heritage of this community, which includes the horses,
Absolutely.
the trails, the fabulous recreation facilities. I agree with what Chuck said. This is actually good advertising for the community.
I'm just sorry that Chris didn't show up in his biker leathers or neoprene, whichever you prefer.
Yeah.
Yes, Irene.
Just a recommendation for the language instead of saying bike because it's so vague. It doesn't exclude a motorbike, and I've had that happen in a different community. Maybe say bicycle.
I think the signs are standard.
The typical DOT approved sign is hiker, biker, horse. So we went with a pre-approved DOT sign. I haven't seen one that says bicycle. I can take another look and see if there's one, but I hadn't seen anything that, unless it was specific to bicycles only. But I wanted to have it include everybody, especially horses, since that's the sort of primary users and funders of a lot of the trail and the open space we have here, which is...
Exactly. I just want to make sure that we don't open it up to
Well, yeah,
motorized
it's all
vehicles
no
either.
motorized. Yeah, most of the trails have other marks saying no motorized access, but
Except snowmobiles. It's not on there either.
the snowmobiles is limited access only in a couple locations with enough snow. It's somewhat restricted, but
We've left off skateboarding, we've left off roller skating, I mean skiing.
they don't
There's
work.
a lot of things we could
Yeah.
put on there, but this is close enough.
Just an aside, the Bay State signs are actually in the Sherborn State Forest now.
Yeah.
They're not on the roads, but they're in the forest. So.
Yeah, all of the Rocky Narrows section of the Bay Circuit Trail has the new logos on it. I have the box of all the signs for the rest of the Bay Circuit Trail through town. Just haven't had a chance to go out and put them up. We got about a little over 9 miles in town, in the woods, which is pretty nice.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. We should take a vote. All in favor of these? Opposed? And
Thank you for all you
good.
do.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Not only on this, but you've got so many different things you're doing for the town. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay.
A few hats, depends on the night.
Nancy Hess, our collector, with a question of an agreement, which I guess by statute we have to approve.
You've had these similar things come in front of you
Yep.
in the past.
This is exactly like what we did a few weeks ago with the Unibank agreement. As you know, we're trying to get more and more of our departments online with the capability of having their fees or their charges paid online. And Unibank cannot do some of the things that are offered by another vendor. And the vendor that we're looking at is City Hall Systems, which works through Base Commerce and dumps the money into an account that we choose, which will probably be Middlesex. The town clerk would like to have her dog licenses go through this because they will be able to upload the rabies certificates. The applicants at home can do that apparently to make them accessible to the clerk without having to come in and do the paperwork there. And we've been in some discussion with the fire department and police department about whether burn permits will go through them or whether they'll go through Unibank, or how we're going to do burn permits. So in order for me to go into an agreement with some other entity to collect money for the town, it has to be with your approval. So I would ask that you approve that we enter this agreement with Base Commerce. I submitted the agreement to town council, and Chris Brown finds no issue with it. And so I would like the authority, although I have not committed for every department that might want to use this. I'm fairly sure the town clerk is going to, but I need your permission before I.
So question for you, Nancy. It talks about a 50-cent transaction fee, and it also talks about the police, I'll just say the burn permits or the fire department, where you can get a burn permit and then you can activate it via computer. Is it 50 cents every time you touch the system, or is it only to get the permit?
Okay, my understanding is the 50 cents is the ACH transaction. That's the only charge that will be there. When you go to pay, because it'll be an electronic check, there's a 50-cent activation fee. Now, we all have to sit at the table and hammer out the agreement when we of how things will be done. But my understanding from my meeting with City Hall is that people will apply for the permit. They will assign a number to the people, and the people will pay like you do your taxes or whatever online. And then on the day that they want to burn, they go to their computer, and the police are the people who get the call or make the call to find out whether by state law it's okay to burn that day. And they will have up there, no burning today or burn today. And the people plug their number in, and the police can access who all is burning that day by their permit number. So we've been through a couple of iterations. I had met with the fire chief and his administrative assistant, who at first we were talking about them administering this, but when we realized that a lot of this had to be done on weekends, and there's nobody to administer it on weekends there, we had to take a shift to the left, and we thought, well, we'll go back to Unibank. And then just recently, with talking to some of the police officers, they were very interested in managing the computer part of it, so we may shift back to that. But as I say, we still have to sit down and work out the details. But this company is connected with Kelly and Ryan, who we use for our deputy collections in town, and they've been upstanding for us. They've treated us like we're the city of Boston as far as their services and so forth. So I have a great deal of faith that the program they come up with will be something that's very useful for us. So I'm looking, it'll be less complicated for the users on this end, because the bank can't number the permits or anything like that. Unibank would take a lot more dealing with the paper than if we go with City Hall Systems.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, please.
I don't like the 50-cent fee, and would suggest to you that it's backwards. That is, we want to encourage people to pay electronically. I would rather have a lower fee for those who pay electronically and a higher fee for those who don't. In other words, $10 if you pay electronically, and $15 if you don't pay electronically. We want to encourage the electronic payments for a variety of security reasons and for a variety of accounting reasons and for the ease of the public. And instead, this becomes regressive in that we are penalizing somebody. So on a $10 burn fee, for burning, there's a $10 fee. That's $10.50 if you try to pay electronically, versus if you stop by and pay the old-fashioned way, it's only $10. It would be better policy for us to modify the fee to make a two-tier fee, one which would be higher fee for those who don't pay electronically. Because at the end of the day, the real costs of not paying electronically are higher than the 50 cents. And we want to give people an incentive. We'd like to go to all electronic payments as the best thing for the town.
Well, as you know, I'm not in charge of that, and I have had discussions because I know at one point in time Tim was contemplating how to make this a fair thing as far as the permits are concerned. So that would be left to you to determine with Tim as far as changing permit fees. I'm open to whatever you want to do. All I care about is getting the money accounted for and in the bank, and the permitting end of it is managed well enough that we can track what's paid for and so forth, and I leave the administration of that to the experts who have a track record of doing that, and I'm on board with that. I would like to encourage as much use, although my argument, because there is an ACH transaction, we have no control over, that's a banking fee for the excise tax, so it costs $0.25 to do that, and Tim's online now with the applications for inspections, for alarms and detectors and that kind of thing. So people have to pay $0.25 on that, and we've gotten pushback. It's usually a philosophical issue more than the 25 cents, but we tell them it costs them more in gas to come down and do it over the counter, and certainly costs more than a stamp to mail in an application. And we have the building department going online. We're going to be taking the farm pond stickers at the same time as we take our excise tax in the same envelope if people want to go that route or online, hoping to discourage the over-the-counter applications when we get to that. So we have a lot of moving parts. The easier we can make it for our point of view, the better. So if you can encourage people, however, to do their business online, that it just makes it so simple for us. There's no application to make out. The printout comes from the computer. The money's already in the bank. It's just such an easy process when they do it online. So.
In raising that point, I'm going to support this contract. But I'm saying that and it's beyond tax collecting or fee collecting, the issue I'm raising.
Paul, I got a great answer to your comment, if I could. 2 points. One, whatever that fee is, they can negotiate out. We should just eat the fee as the town at the moment. It should be transparent to the customer, whether it's $10 or $50 for the permit fee. And a good example would be there's 2, if not 3 weekends a year at the end of burning season that gets so busy for the desk officer that the fire department plants someone at the desk with the desk officer for at least 4, if not 8 hours. We're paying for that. So the 50-cent fee times, what do we have, a couple hundred permits a year? 300. It's silly money. We spend hundreds of dollars paying someone to sit there and take the phone calls that are going to go away. That'll get administered. We don't know exactly how it's going to be, but it's certainly going to be better than it is now. Way better.
Yeah, I think we're all in favor of this.
Yeah.
It's just to add that fee, I think.
I think that should be part of our cost of
Right.
administration. Just
Well,
as-
I'd like
As if you were
to-
doing credit card transactions, you'd be eating a percentage.
I'd like to comment on that. I would be very opposed to just having it swept into the permit, because I think it's much more transparent. For one thing, if we have it as a separate thing, the way it's set up now with Unibank and so forth, that fee gets absorbed. We don't have to deal with the fee. Otherwise, we have to appropriate money. We have to guess how much that's going to be, because we have no way to pay the company that fee if it becomes part of what we collect and we absorb the fee. So for the transparency with the people that they're paying a fee, I still would say you pick a permit number and that goes, you can make it $14.50 and it'll be $15 when they get through, but it still needs to be a separate part of the transaction.
I would bet that someone in this room can figure out a way in 2015 that we can charge $10 for something and 50 cents of it goes to the bank fees. Because we paid bank fees up until last month when we changed banks. I don't know how we were appropriating it. I don't care.
We're talking
The
about-
customer should just be able to pay a $10 fee, and however it gets handled at town hall.
We're talking $150, because if you do the arithmetic, 50 cents times 300 is $150.
Right. Mike will write the check. I mean,
And Michael,
nothing.
It's
nothing.
Our finance person correcting your math here, Paul.
Not correcting math, actually talking about a statute that accounts payable warrants have to be approved by the town accountant, myself as the finance director, and the board of selectmen. So you cannot have a fee applied directly through a bank against the town's bank accounts. So the banks would have to invoice the town. It would still be vetted, so you'd still have to have someone reconciling every single transaction to make sure we're not being overbilled. But it can be done. I would just recommend that we look at it at a bigger scope as to when we look at all user fees, that we look at, should we apply an administrative fee to those? If you are online, you get X, and if you are walking into town hall or one of the departments, the cost would be Y.
but the reason why I mention that is because that's what I've seen done elsewhere. But I've also seen one fee for all. There are different costs, and you want fees to approximate the costs, but the labor costs that go with handling like a cash transaction, somebody comes in and pays $10 in cash,
Agreed.
that's,
Ridiculous.
Losing money on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
What does the fee cover?
the burning permits.
How much? Aren't they 30?
They're $10
Are they 10?
now.
And what is it? What's it used for?
It would be cheaper to just give it away.
The burning permit?
Yeah, that's ridiculous
what's-
to charge $10.
Why do we charge $10?
Well, in
Do
the
we
past,
charge
it was
anything?
all done by hand. All burn permits issued. Yes, if it was $10, it is $10 for the permits. Up to now, as has been discussed, it was done manually. We had to get them printed up at our cost. We had to have them, people come in or to the police station, bring a check, write them out. So the $10 in essence was a wash to the costs of the.
No, I get
burn
that,
system.
but what's the $10? What's the fee for? Is it to cover the cost of
Administering it.
an official going out and checking on the burning,
No.
or so it's just to pay the cost of paying the fee?
We're creating extra work for the
No,
desk
yeah.
officer and then charging for that
But
extra work
also to
that we
keep a
create.
written log.
That's exactly what we're doing.
No, you need a permit to burn, though. You don't want just anybody deciding they're gonna burn any day they want. If you have a permit, then you call
Great.
and
Yeah,
talk to the fire department and find out you're
You're
allowed
collecting $10
That is-
to cost $10.
It's a public safety.
Well, I'm not speaking to the cost of it, but I'm speaking to the need to at least have some kind of permit requirement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you have to keep track of what fires are going
Yeah,
on.
no, there's no doubt that there's a permit requirement.
And if there's high winds, I know that my requests to burn have been denied because there've been high winds or too dry or unsafe. So,
And when's the last time we raised it?
1920?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not changed in 30 years.
I'm sure the cost of our police and fire department has probably trebled in that time.
I'm trying to figure, so where are you coming from, Mark? It
Well,
shouldn't be
it ought
any
to-
fee,
it ought
or
to
there
be a
should be a
30
higher fee?
If we need a fee, then it ought to be a $30 fee because it's paying for the cost of
or just free.
administration. And the cost of administration is 3 times what it was when we set it at $10. But that's probably a discussion for a different day.
I
It's
thought we
also
had
a-
something easy here, Nancy. I thought we just were going to approve your contract.
Yes.
That would be it.
Well, let me say one thing about Sean's suggestion
one
that
quick
it be
question.
free. That's going to be more of a problem because you can't put it through one of these processes if there isn't a charge. They'll all have to do all the applications and everything will have to be done over the
What the
counter.
50 cents is for. Not the $10, the 50 cents.
Nancy, a quick question. The contract you're looking for is with City Hall Systems?
Actually, it's with Base Commerce, who manages the City Hall Systems part of the ACH transaction.
And is Base Commerce a authorized bank under the terms of the statute?
I,
The
they're,
statute says that you can enter into a contract for not more than 3 years.
they're not going to do the banking. It's going to go into Middlesex, which would be an authorized. They're handling the transactions that put it in the bank.
So,
It's the pass-through.
but Chuck's point is that you're not under the statute because this isn't a contract with a bank.
Right. This contract does not fall within this statutory provision.
Good catch.
So we can all go home. This is great.
So move.
So what you're saying is that you don't need to approve it because it isn't a bank? Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm assuming that your existing contract with the bank is of 3 years or less, and this fulfillment contract, I'd certainly move to approve it.
I would second it.
It makes sense, but I don't think it has to be approved under Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 2A.
The statute that was given to us probably isn't the right one, but we all support what you're doing, and so I'm seconding the motion.
And that was a question I asked Mike before I came before. I haven't had to deal with anything but taxes that fit into this statute in the past. Now we're collecting other things, and this is in the tax statute, so I said to Mike, do I still come for approval or not?
And tell me it wasn't a bank, Nancy. That's the whole
No,
thing.
no, I mean, when we were talking about Unibank.
Oh, for Unibank, yes.
And collecting
I think for
for
Unibank, you would
other-
have to if it was a
other
bank.
funds. I believe from the way it is set up, because I have not used them before, that this is just the pass-through that administers the thing, and it will get dumped into my bank account at Unibank.
There's a
And
motion
they
to
don't
approve.
call any of these things contracts,
approve it
they're
just to
all
be safe.
agreements.
Yeah, just do that.
You seconded it, right?
Call a question and let's move on.
Trying to call a question.
I got-
We're trying to call a question for half an hour.
I got one more question while we're
go
on the
ahead.
discussion. We're moving forward on this, but the dump still takes cash or tokens? What's the dump take?
They take checks.
Checks?
Yeah. Rarely do they take cash in there, but we've been talking about how to do that. But that's a bigger thing than
It might be a little-
farm pond stickers.
Yeah, all right.
That's been something we've been talking about for 2.5 years, that we got to just...
And this won't be
gotta
part of the
just
permitting
resolve that.
fees and everything else?
Probably longer than 2.5
The whole
years, that's
difference.
just what I've heard.
That what?
We've been talking about this for years, the transfer station. We just have to get that done.
Well, they're not. They're being accommodating when somebody comes in with cash and.
Well, it's not, my point was we were trying to get all transactions out of the transfer station and have that run through a central place in this building
And yeah,
for financial control reasons.
right. And we are trying to get at the same time the transactions out of our office. So this will be.
And I guess that was more my point. We must not be the first town in Massachusetts that collects dog license fees and burn permit fees and building permit fees. Hasn't anyone built a system that would accommodate all this?
Yes, there is the capability with Unibank and with City Hall Systems and probably a myriad of other things. We are trying to do this in such a way that it doesn't crash the system. We're trying to do it in a way where we can educate people and we can bring people on slowly and And we have made progress in that. In fact, the other point I'd like to make tonight is because we now have so many, we're going to have an online payment center. All of these different departments have had their own little link on the main page, and Jeannie started to complain that we were cluttering her main page and it was going to cost us more money to have all of these links. So Unibank is in the process now of making us one center that you'll click on if you have an online payment, and then you'll have drop-down menu for the department and the things under the department, and we can add things as we go along, which we're trying to do with the different departments. Unfortunately, if we do a city hall system, they won't be on that. They'll still have to be their own separate thing. But most of our departments are using the Unibank. So
Nancy's also been talking to the recreation.
yes, recreation is planning on going on with their snappers and their summer go-round and t-ball, which is what they collect for.
Because those are all collected by an individual that's basically a volunteer and then turns in the paperwork with the cash or checks or whatever comes in.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Hearing no more further discussion. All in favor?
Thank you, gentlemen.
But
Thank
please
you.
do think about, I guess this is to the public who are setting fees, and us, at least charge more for cash payments and check payments than for electronic payments. It's the only way to get people to do this. So I'm saying that to our financial team, but everybody's out there, the chiefs who are here, the whatever boards and committees might be listening, please set it up so that for like the burn permits, it's $15 if you try and pay cash and $10 if you do it electronically.
Well, the other thing that we are doing in that line is some of the things you can only do online. And some of the things are set up so that if they don't do it online, they've got to come during office hours and pay over the counter at my office before they go and do business. So hopefully that will encourage them to just do it online and be done.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. That's great. Okay, so the next item is, I guess, consideration of sections 21 to 23 regarding employee health insurance.
I wanted to just say that we had also put an executive session, so the board can discuss the consideration of MGL 32B, sections 21 through 23 regarding employee health insurance. But the board also has the opportunity, they could vote to go into executive session to discuss how that impacts strategy with collective bargaining agreements. So if the board wants to talk openly about adoption of those statutes or those sections,
You have to talk openly about.
you do have to
You
talk
can't adopt it in executive session.
No. But if you start talking about how these might affect collective bargaining, you either should back off that conversation or go into executive session and just try to talk about the consideration of the sections, not about collective bargaining unless you're in executive session.
And these sections just empower us to do things. They don't require us to do things.
Correct.
With the caveat, this is. Well, before I say anything, I got to figure out my recusal status. If we're talking about plan design at this point, then I can participate. But if we're talking about using the statute not only to make plan design, but to select vendors and suppliers, Irene is nodding her head, then I have to recuse myself. If it's just this theoretical discussion about plan design, I can participate.
Well, I don't think we're taking any vendors tonight, right? We're not talking about any vendors
No,
tonight.
you're talking about the adopting those sections. There's nothing being discussed about which vendors are on the table, who's going to be quoted, or that kind of thing. But when each one of those things, if they're adopted and the selectmen decide to like pull the trigger on using one of those, then a discussion would kick off about what exactly is going to be brought to the table from the selectmen's side to discuss with the public employee committee. And at that point, that would be very specifics to plan design changes and carriers.
Well, I'm gonna, if I could participate with the disclosure that I'm essentially one of the major carriers, because I'm on the board of directors of one of the carriers. And I'm part of state government, and one of the other carriers is part of the same government. But on the issue of adopting a statute, that's what I wanted to say, is that I would urge the board not to vote this for a couple of reasons. It triggers a process that's very fast and very rough, and before you do that, I think it would be better management to discuss what we're trying to do with the unions and see if we can accomplish all of this collaboratively, and make this vote only as pretty much the last step as opposed to the first step. This is doing it first before you've done the rounds with all the unions. My experience has been is very unwelcomed and produces friction where you don't need to have it. So instead, I would urge the board to have a discussion with each of the unions and the employees, get their feedback, figure out what's doable on a collaborative basis. If that process doesn't work, then you have this in your holster.
Except you don't if you haven't passed it,
You can pass it at any time.
but you can only apply it to plan changes, for example, at certain points in time. So we were operating off of a schedule that...
There's no limit. The only limit is with GIC, but and that's a particular vendor, and I can't get involved with that. But on making plan changes, you can make plan changes essentially. You can set that up anytime you want to.
Irene, you've got some thoughts on this?
With plan design changes, specifically with our current vendor, West Suburban Health Group, we have to notify them by March 1st if we're going to leave the plan by July 1st. So there are other timelines and deadlines other than GIC. GIC notification is December 1st, and then subsequently July 1st. So there are inherent changes that need to be made or not made during certain time periods. So that's why it's helpful to have the statutes adopted, where if through the Insurance Advisory Committee and management start looking at our health plan design currently and would like to make some changes, we have that ability to do so.
But if we're going to talk about West Suburban, I have to recuse myself.
We're not. She just stopped there at that. I think she just used that as an example.
I'm talking about collective bargaining. What I'm trying to say is that I believe in working with employees. I believe in working collaboratively with employees. And every community that goes this route in voting this thing, it's rough and tumble. And sometimes you need to do that. Depends on the community. But I think in Sherborn, the Sherborn that I know, you're much better off and probably will end up with less bruised feelings and better results if you first make the effort to work with people. You bring them the problem. We have the problem. We can't afford what we've taken on here, both in terms of the long-term obligations, OPEB and all of that, and the short-term obligations, and what we're paying on a daily basis. And talk to the unions and see what you can do. And with the non-union employees, and treat them all with dignity and respect. This statute, which I helped write, has the good result of accomplishing things pretty quickly. You can, within like 90 days, you can accomplish the result. But they all know that you have that power. And so when you're sitting down and talking to the union, and they say, well, we don't want to do that, then you can say, well, then you're forcing us to do this other thing. But if you do it first, I think, and my experience has been it makes it harder. And at the end of the process, you have people who are unhappy. Whereas if you work at it collaboratively, I can't say that everybody will be happy, but at least they're part of the better part of the process, and you treat them better as human beings. That's my 2 cents on this.
Can we paint the other side of that picture real quick before we, and I'll try not to get into, cross that line where we should be in executive session, but let's talk about that process real quick, because if we start today and we want to talk to our unions, they comprise Sherborn and Dover Sherborn, and really Dover. So, last time we did this, how long did that take to get everyone on board, to get onto the rate saver? And we haven't even begun that. We tried to, but we haven't begun that.
Well, let me say that we followed the process that I outlined the last time, and that's part of the reason why we got to the rate saver. We did negotiate with all the unions. We did it one by one. We put provisions in there that said that if we get all the unions to agree, then this is what's going to happen. We signed collective bargaining agreements. It was time consuming, indeed. The advantage of the statute, you correctly point out, is that we can get this done a lot faster. My point is that our relationship with our employees is a long-term proposition, and that at the end of the day, the quality of this government depends on the quality of our employees. And people who are unhappy is going to have a direct effect on services, whereas people who are treated with more collaboratively, it becomes more of a shared problem-solving effort. So we ended up with the rate saver, and it did produce savings. Could we have extracted more? Yeah, we had the statute, we had this possibility, we had fallback positions that we could use, but we didn't need to.
But my point now is our inaction is going to cause our employees to lose the rate saver and lose those benefits, because the time will have passed for a couple of the collective bargaining units
It doesn't take
to
long.
make any changes, and West Suburban is going to make the changes for us. That's a fact.
There's essentially 3 unions. We have the police union, we have the CM&D union, and we have the union that represents the Pine Hill teachers.
Just for clarification, we have 7 bargaining units. Within Pine Hill School, there's 5 units just within itself. So there's teachers, teacher support, custodial, food service, and I can't recall the last one, but we have 5 units just within Pine Hill School. So we do have a total of 7. And just to clarify, we do have an insurance advisory committee. Unfortunately, our first meeting wasn't able to go forward as planned, so we're meeting November 19th at 6 o'clock. And there's representatives from every single bargaining unit on the Insurance Advisory Committee, and then we're going to bring forward 2 non-voting ex officio non-union employees forward to the board to consider for appointing on November 24th. So we do have people that represent and are the voice for those groups to come and discuss their insurance concerns.
So why don't we do that first?
We are doing that.
Why couldn't we have that meeting?
There was an issue with the town clerk's office.
The swearing in of the appointments.
What's that?
And it was timing of the swearing in of the appointments in time for the meeting.
So
That was the
they
issue.
weren't sworn in time for the meeting? I'm trying to understand.
About half of our members work at the school during the day and do not have the opportunity to come to town hall between 8 and noon Monday through Thursday. So therefore, they weren't able to get sworn in for the meeting.
So 8 and noon, Monday through Thursday is the only time they can get sworn in?
Yes, I had asked for consideration for appointments or evening times, so we're still working through that.
Yeah, I mean, Carol's usually pretty good about accommodating or
Yes.
going to somebody if she can. All right, it just sounds like, advanced planning. Frank, you got something to say?
Can I jump in?
Oh, yeah, Mark.
Frank?
I didn't know you, obviously.
I think we probably took a couple things out of order here. We probably should have spoken about the budget development before we moved on to this item, because if you read ahead, you see we're looking at something on the order of a $600,000 gap that we need to fill. And I don't think we can afford to wait and push this off yet another year without at least having it as an option. I'm saying we should definitely use it. I also don't think that using it equates to not treating people with dignity and respect. I think this statute was written for a reason. I think, bargaining is bargaining. I think if this were a tool like this were available to the unions, they would adopt it in a heartbeat. So, I think we should at least have this available to us and not put it off, because we're looking at a really serious budget gap. Having said that, we did attend a meeting. As you remember, the superintendent was here and requested another follow-up conversation about this to discuss their concerns about the complications involved with the different teachers' unions. I attended that meeting along with David and Irene. And they raised probably many of the same issues you heard before, and still have some concerns and would like to look for some way around those. They don't know how to do that yet. But I did commit to that group that I would request that we would postpone the vote of adopting this until, based on Irene's guidelines, that we would need to do this by December 1st to have it available to us in this next budget cycle. But we would put off that vote until our next meeting on the 24th in order to give them an opportunity to see what they can come up with.
So is there anything wrong, thank you for that. Is there anything wrong with, during that period of time, to have this committee that has all the unions participating in it, have a discussion about accomplishing all of this without having to pull the trigger on the statute?
We can definitely add it to their agenda for November 19th.
So they're having a meeting November 19th?
Yes.
Is that a full committee? You mentioned you needed to make some more appointments at another meeting of this board.
The 2 non-voting ex officio members are just locally. That's not constrained by the law that sets up an insurance advisory committee. So they're not necessarily included in the quorum or no quorum.
Those are the ones that we,
That happens when we formed the committee.
right, that we suggested adding.
Or just one other point. It's not me who's saying that people feel treated roughly through the statutes. The unions that are saying. I mean, they are pretty clear about their view about the statute. And also, the meeting I attended here with the superintendent, he kept using the word collaborative. and I was sitting in the audience because we were talking about providers, but I tried to make the comment that in my world, collaborative means collective bargaining. Collaborative is not the statute. So I was interpreting what the superintendent was saying was give the collaboration a chance. And that's essentially what I'm saying. If we can do that to meet his timeline, see how far we can get, then we accomplish your goal. And I think we will be treating the employees in a way that their representatives say is a better way to treat them.
I'm just going to raise a concern. It's something that was stated, is that Dover didn't intend to leave West Suburban Health Group. So that's a challenge in the collaboration to begin with. That doesn't mean we need to move forward, move back, move sideways. But that is a concern that we've had, is will the town of Sherborn be locked into that West Suburban Health Group association just simply because one of the three entities has already made a decision. With three entities being the regional schools, the town of Sherborn and town of
So we had a
Dover.
town council opinion on
Yeah,
that.
that we weren't bound by all of that, that we could be free to do what we wanted, so on.
No, you're asking for a collaborative process, which includes the teachers who are represented in a union that involves two other units. And they are the ones that hold the biggest amount of weight, so.
I understand, but if they say no, then at least my conscience would be clearer. But if what they said the last time was, please don't pull that trigger, we'll deal. And so sometimes, it's maybe politically incorrect, but if you have a loaded gun, sometimes it's better not to shoot the other guy to show him that you got the gun. You just leave it on the table so that he knows you have a gun.
Still a felony, Paul.
I'm trying to think of which candidate's position that represents.
This would be the third community that
I think, the other thing is that the teacher contract isn't being negotiated until next year, correct?
Correct.
And at the meeting, Mark, didn't they say that they would be looking at bargaining that starting in the fall of 2016?
That's right.
So you're looking at the train that we're thinking is coming from the current carrier that we know is going to show up at the station will definitely show up at the station by the time.
It will have already come and left. And we will have left the police and CM&D units hung out to dry. Because their newest contract will have already come and gone.
Okay, but I can't talk about specific providers, but I could suggest that sometimes you can give notice to an outfit, because I don't think the town wants to stay with that outfit for a lot of different reasons, but I'm at the point, I'm at the line where I can't talk about that carrier and what the pros and cons of that carrier are, but we suggest to you that there may be reasons for the town to leave that particular group entirely separate and unrelated to all these other issues. But again,
We didn't hear you, don't
Right.
worry.
at this point I gotta refuse.
But there's two other groups that we have to pull along with us if we choose that. And if they just drag their feet, I mean, it's next meeting or not, right?
Well, why
To
not
adopt
talk
this.
to them? Why not talk to them?
They will have had one meeting as a group, and they have no authority whatsoever to do anything.
I have
That
had
insurance advisory committee has no authority without the statute to do anything.
I have had a few training sessions with different, with the department heads, with a few folks at the library, with other areas, just giving them information about the health insurance picture for Sherborn at this point in time. And I just wanted to let everybody know we have Peter Savage from Cook & Company here. He's our health insurance consultant if you had any questions that I might not be able to provide information on.
Frank, what did you have to add?
Okay, first of all, Frank Hess, South Main Street, member of the school committee, and was also a member of the negotiating team, as was Peter Caruso, who was a rather active, helpful member during that process. And I would like to encourage you to go slowly as far as adopting those three sections, and if you do adopt them, to be reluctant to put them into use right away. I think you should work as Paul said, with the groups first. Now, I noticed you say that you're going to discuss strategy, as far as respect to the police collective bargaining unit in your executive session. And I think you should do that. And I think you should do that with all the groups, okay? Because I think that not just one person from each group, but I think the individuals need to be educated in what's at stake here and what's going on. And one thing as far as bargaining is concerned, when we did our last contract, we talked about something called total compensation. When we did that, we figured out, what the personal day changes would cost us, the maternity leave, and the health insurance. So we had the health insurance on there, and we, projected that out for the 3 years of the contract, and we kept the total contract within 2.5, including the health insurance. Okay, and as a result of that bargaining, there were some changes to the top 2 levels on the contract, but the starting salary in steps 1 through 11, when we finish this contract next year, there would have been no change in the starting salary for those first 11 steps for 7 years. 7 years, not one change in those. They had their steps, but not one change. And I don't think you'll find any other system, particularly no other system with the quality that we have here, that goes 7 years without a raise. And one thing, of course, they were looking at is what they were getting was their health insurance. And so we bargained in good faith, okay, and now, we're looking at an imminent change, which could happen rather quickly if you implement those particular statutes. So that's one reason I think that you should work with the groups, not just the group that's meeting with Irene, which is a good idea, but that's just one person who then has to go out and touch everyone else. And so I think that's something that has to be done a little more slowly than perhaps some of you want to do it. I mean, we did it last time around. I mean, we came to Rate Saver, which was a big change and a big cost for a lot of the employees. But they got there and they agreed to it. So I would just say walk carefully and thoughtfully. Thank you.
I've been trying to be thoughtful.
We've got somebody here from, could I make a comment before?
Could I?
Good evening, Jim Graziano, Sherborn Police, Union President. I just wanted to discuss or clarify some issues in regards to the health insurance. The union has been forward-thinking and willing to work with the town, and it was 2 contracts ago where we went to the Rate Saver for a $500 stipend. We won a full contract before the teachers' union, before that was able to work out. My understanding was they got something around a 4% raise, as opposed to us taking that insurance with a $500 stipend. And then to clarify on another point why the insurance committee was held up last week, people weren't able to get down at that time, and the day before the actual meeting, we were notified by email, all of us, and everyone doesn't have access to the email outside of work, that we had to bring a letter to be sworn into the committee. So there were people from the schools that didn't know who to get a letter from. We weren't really sure what to do about that, so that held up the process. Therefore, we weren't able to begin our meeting. The group's willing to work with the town, and we want the best insurance for our employees and the best for the town, but that held us up last week. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just going to comment on Frank's thing that I think I've been very thoughtful in discussing the health insurance, and if in my head when you play it out, you're going to start a collaborative process that's going to take 4 months to 8 months to a year. It was somewhere in that ballpark last time, and you'll already have changes in the health insurance have already been implemented, and it's just, to me, it's very tough to go bargaining with a lot of different units when everything has already become emotional and become a necessity to do something about it, as opposed to what I've been trying to think, that this is forward thinking of trying to deal with a problem that we know is coming down the road. So I just want to say
It's not coming, it's here.
So,
Good point.
right. So I just want to say we have spent a lot of time being thoughtful about this and are trying to be respectful and trying to inform the employees of both sides of, or everything that's going on. And then Peter Savage is, he's been through this before in, I don't know how many communities.
I personally, about
11 communities. And I found in the past that the statutes were a positive tool. And in one town, it was the teachers union that was requesting that the town pass the statutes, because it did give a deadline to when they knew, because it separates bargaining of the health insurance separately from the wages. They wrapped up that benefits and got that taken care of, and it was behind them, and then they could focus on what they were going to do with wages. I think the collaborative process has something to do with bargaining wages and health insurance together, and that, to me, that's just, it's very difficult. It's always been difficult.
Peter, could I ask Peter a quick question, which is, the 11 cities where you've used this process, were all of the town employees unionized?
Oh, yes. Yeah, these are
Because
all-
that's much more the consistent pattern. I'm also concerned about the fact that we have a fair number of employees who are not unionized, and I'm concerned about an incentive.
No, those communities also would have had non-union employees.
They did,
Yeah.
and they weren't 100% unionized. But I think even with your 150E bargaining, that you basically do all your bargaining with the collective bargaining groups, and the non-union people basically get whatever happens with those groups. And it's not really very different, regardless of the statute we're working on. I think if I count this thing, the point was, and I think from what I see with you having... My name is Peter Savage. I'm from Cook and Company and work as a consultant with the town. What the theory behind these statutes, the 21 through 23, was basically a history of looking at municipalities collectively in Massachusetts and finding that the traditional 150E bargaining on health care was cumbersome, and it wasn't working terribly well. And frankly, until these statutes came along, you found that the benefit structures out there hadn't changed substantially in years. So what's happened is, even, and I agree with your point out there, even if you don't accept it, the knowledge that you could certainly adds weight to management's bargaining side. Several of the communities we've been in, they have passed it and they really haven't used it, but they've had it in their back pocket if all else fell apart. The problem, I think, David, that you're talking about is timing. If you go into a negotiation on your traditional 150E, you've got to get everybody to agree in there, and before you can enact it. That's cumbersome. I'm not saying it's wrong, and from what I can see from your benefit packages, you've actually done pretty well here with those negotiations. But it's not getting any easier. You're getting to some deadlines that are going to be really tough for you, and we generally recommend that it's probably best for managements to have this as an available tool, as opposed to having it in the distance where you still would have to go through the process of getting it passed and then enact it. But if you can get the same results without it, fine. But most communities find out they can't. I mean, it was interesting that the same or versions of the same statutes were proposed about 7 different times in preceding its final acceptance. And it never, in some cases, never even made it to a vote because there was a lot of pressure against these statutes being passed. Eventually, when they were passed, there were a lot of provisions in it that obviously were from the labor side that said that if you're going to do this thing, you can't just move benefit packages to the same level as the state benefit packages in one quick move where it took the state 10 or 15 years to get there. It's really not fair to the employees, and that was the whole mitigation side of it. That if you do this, then you've got to take a portion of whatever savings are out there and use it to ease people into the new benefits. I think it's a good tool to have. And it may be unnecessary to use it, but it's nice to have it in your back pocket.
Can I just make a point through a question?
Sure.
By statute, we can accept this at any time. The Board of Selectmen can accept it at any time.
Correct.
Doesn't need a town meeting vote, correct?
Correct.
So, any time that it's put on the agenda, we can vote it. Doesn't have to be hearings, there doesn't have to be petitions, there doesn't have to be ballot questions, there's none of that. We can always do it. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So just because I don't understand fully some of the points that Paul had made before, is it true if we passed it that we could also keep it in our back pocket and not use it for a period of time? Okay.
Absolutely. It's it's really an option that you have. It's a tool, and I think where people have had it and they've come to agreement, it did also just help get to agreements quicker.
Because
if you didn't formally use the statutes.
I think, Paul, before you said once it's passed, it starts a process that moves pretty quickly, I think, if those were your words. And I don't know what process it is you're talking about that happens just because you passed the statute.
Just a copy of the statutes here. I'll give you a minute, I can elaborate on that. So, continue the discussion. But I might say that there's been a request from the schools and there's been a request from Selectman Brandon to postpone this to our next meeting, which
And I agree with that too, yeah.
I support that as
I
well.
think we all agree with that.
I disagree with that.
Okay, I think 4 of the 5 of us agree with that. But I think at the next meeting, we're going to still have the same decision, so we might as well sort out some of these issues that everybody's...
Let me make
you
a-
asked a legal question, I would just as soon have a moment, both between now and the next meeting to...
That's fine. I was really only following up on something you said, Paul, so I'm not asking you to do research. I just really wanted to know what was the basis for that statement. Honestly, because I don't know the answer either way to it. I'm not familiar with the statute the way you and others are.
I believe that it does start, and you can't just hold it in your back pocket.
It can open your back pocket.
I think what triggers those timelines, though, is the notification to the Public Employee Committee.
Right.
Does that trigger the...
That's what I was going to ask Peter.
There's a very formal process.
Right.
If you have this and elect to just go into regular 150 bargaining, you can. If in order to use this, you would have to, and it's very set timelines, you would have to formally notify the Insurance Advisory Committee. They would then be asked to, and give them a presentation of what you're proposing. They would then be asked within 10 days to form a Public Employees Committee, which is now the formal representatives of each bargaining unit, who can, in fact, vote on behalf of their unions, and it's a weighted vote. And there's a retiree representative appointed, at that point appointed by the State Retiree Association, who would have 10% of the vote. The point then is you then go into a formal 30-day negotiating period. Now, admittedly, there are limitations on the negotiations as far as the collective bargaining units are concerned, because the primary thing would be if your proposal to the collective bargaining units fell within the guidelines of benefits, in fact, meaning that they were no more stringent than the state plan. If the numbers that were associated with those, that what your costs would be without that and what the cost would be using that proposal, if those are basically agreed, so that would determine, again, the savings and therefore the 25% mitigation. As long as those two things are in place, it really comes down to the third element, which is what do you do with the mitigation? How is it distributed? And that's really a big part of the negotiating portion. It's formal, but it doesn't start unless you formally put a proposal in front of an insurance advisory committee and advise them and it's very strict in the statute that it's got to be, either registered letter or whatever. But I mean, it's a very
By proposal, you mean a plan, something that has been developed that's a comprehensive
Yeah, you would
plan?
say, here's a benefit package that we're proposing. Here are the costs that we see associated with that thing, and here's a mitigation proposal out here as to how to use the monies that would be saved to ease people into the new
And we don't
benefits.
have that.
And that proposal would be informed by this committee that,
I'm sorry,
that proposal would be informed by this committee that we just started, that would
no,
provide.
the proposal, no, would actually
provide
be presented
feedback.
by management, by town management.
Sure, but we would put that together,
Right.
having heard what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think that's, ultimately, your points are all obviously very well taken. That you don't want to just have a bunch of angry employees at the end of this thing. Employees aren't stupid. They recognize the cost of health care. And frankly, we find in most communities, if they're well informed about things, they're willing to work with you. This statute was out there if, in fact, to encourage movement on these programs. As I said, you've done reasonably well in getting to the rate saver programs. That's better than a lot of communities that haven't touched these statutes or anything else. Or, your benefits are more in touch with what's happening in the rest of the world out there than others. But you still have the problem with the costs of your health benefits are taking up a bigger chunk of town budget every year. So
One thing the statute doesn't cover, as we kept it out of here, was the percentage payments to be made by the employee.
the contribution ratios.
Right, that's significant element of the whole cost package, number one. And number two, that has to be done through a collaborative process.
Correct.
Cannot be done from this process. This
Now
is about plan design.
It is.
Deductibles.
There have been situations that we've been involved with where when you get into the discussions that the employees have said, well, could we offer a change in contribution percentage or something else in lieu of doing such and such? And sure, that you talk about that and you come to whatever agreement you want to. But you're absolutely right. It's specifically not part of the statute. That is left to 150E negotiations.
Well, I don't think we disagree on. I'm trying to make the point that we ought to first try talking to people, even if that's time consuming and puts demands on our finance team and our selectmen's office, but we should first try that. And since we have this window now between now and the next meeting, say take advantage of it, see what happens. And I bet you find that the police union is willing to talk. I think you find the CM&D union is willing to talk. So really the one union out there that you have to deal with is the teachers. The
5 units.
I understand the five components of it. But that's really the part where you need to work collaboratively with the school management. And that includes the school committee, and that includes the superintendent, and they're consistently telling you that that isn't the way you want to proceed by invoking the statute. And as I look at the statute, there's shalls in here all over the place. There's shall this, shall that, shall this, shall that. And we're not ready. So, like, the first thing we have to do is the appropriate public authority shall evaluate its health insurance coverage and determine the savings that may be realized after the first 12 months of implementation of plan design or open transfers and subscribers to the commission. Where is it? It doesn't even come to the Board of Selectmen.
It was
So-
presented in June.
It came to us in June?
It was in the presentation in June.
What?
There's only a third provider that we don't have the calculated savings yet.
Okay, well, I can't participate in providers, but what I'm suggesting to you is
Probably to see it.
that, that's probably why I didn't see it, that before you even talk about accepting the statute, you need to have a plan that you're going to present. And if you have the plan, then why not present it to the unions first? You could do that by email practically.
Hold on, wait, hold on.
Just one second.
Before you, I know you're dying to do that. Hold on, 1 second. Because to say that we haven't emailed or talked to the school, those emails went around. Okay, we've done this for like 6 months. But what we're doing right now is jumping back to what you said. If you put the gun on the table, we've been walking around with this gun and pointing it at people. And eventually someone's going to...
The chief is taking notes here.
I mean, but I'm using your analogy.
But let's use a different analogy.
My analogy is a well-informed... He mentioned a well-informed public.
I just don't think it's a good idea.
We keep talking about... We keep bringing this up. And the tone towards us, which we've all probably seen, or at least witnessed, is that we basically did it. So we should have just done it. We keep talking about adopting this, and we haven't. And we're going to talk about it again, and then we're going to hold it off for 2 weeks. But the not so well-informed public has basically taken the preconceived notion that we're going to do it, and or that we've done it. We would have been better off if we just did it, and they would have seen that the end of the world didn't show up here yet. We need to do it if we're going to make any changes, because the changes will be so far behind the contract negotiations that they're not going to make any difference anyway. The plan design changes are coming. You weren't in those meetings because you recused yourself, but they're coming. If we don't do this, they're coming. So that's going to happen anyway. If we do this, we can still sit around and wait for them to come, and everyone will wonder why we didn't do anything. But advisory asked us to look at this. We looked at it. We've had hours of presentations, consultants saying we should do this. And although we haven't gotten everyone on board, we're supposed to be leading this charge. And we're continuing to wait. We've had meetings. Dover's not going to do it. We already know that. They're not doing it.
We were asked to bring in the health insurance consultant. When was that? How long have we had you?
March or April.
On the...
Well, yeah, it's about
February.
6 months or so.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's what we were tasked with the health insurance consultant to do, was look at the utilization rate and what the potential savings are.
I don't think Irene's doing yoga poses. I think she wants to speak. So.
Exercises. Now, the only point I wanted to make in all of this is, if you adopt the statutes tonight, that doesn't mean David and I can move forward and start negotiating and create public employee committees. The board still needs to task us with going into negotiations. So you still decide if we're going into negotiations. We'll have feedback from the Insurance Advisory Committee. Would they like to go into negotiations? So we're not ending the collaborative process by adopting these statutes at all. You'd still have to give us the authority to bargain on behalf of the town. So we'd still be coming back to the board. It would be well publicized, and that's if we go down that road. So I don't think by adopting the statutes that you're handcuffing yourself and letting David and I go start negotiating with unions. We still have to come back to you. We still have to make sure the Board of Selectmen approves of a strategy or recommends a strategy if we even get to a public employee committee. So there's still a lot of steps to this process that we may not even get to. We may come to a consensus with the Insurance Advisory Committee collaboratively without even going to a public employee committee.
You can do that without adopting the statute.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how not doing something gives us more options. I don't understand that. Seems to me we've talked about doing this. We should do it. I agree with Mark. If Mark has made representations that will not do it this week, we shouldn't do it this week. But nobody said anything tonight that tells me there's any advantage to not simply passing this and having the authority if we need to use it. Not that we're going to use it, which is what we've said all along. Doesn't mean we would use it. It just means we would have the tool that the legislature provided in the statute in case a municipality needed the tool.
I think there's one argument that we may just simply give different weight to, which is a shift in the tone of the negotiations and how collegial and collaborative they are. In the private sector, I've worked at 3 companies that have implemented over a number of years health insurance plans that have cost the employees a lot more one, Data General, where there used to be a lot of people in town that worked there, tended to treat employees as liabilities and not assets, and they simply imposed it. And the employees reacted the way you would think that they would. The other two, none of these had any collective bargaining units. The other two worked closely with employees, and it was a much, much better process and outcome, and the plans. So that's the point that Paul is making, that I hear all the arguments, but I think that is a legitimate point.
So what's the, and that's a good explanation, a good synthesis of what Paul said too, but what's the explanation of how adopting the statutory authority with an explicit statement, which we've made 100 times, that it doesn't mean we're going to use it, and when
It may be
Paul and others have said you could adopt it at a moment's notice if you weren't getting the results through the collaborative process. So why is that weight hanging over somebody's head different than this weight hanging over?
I think it's the point that Sean was making, is perception versus reality. But if I'm negotiating a contract with you, your perception of my motives, your perception of what's good and bad matter. And
yeah,
the
but
impact-
I also think
impact-
when we sit here and say it's disrespectful to use this statute and all that other things, I think that colors the perception. And when the school committee is convinced and apparently spreads the word that we're going to do something over the objections of the unions and other people and over the objections of the school committee, I think that also colors the perception. So I think we actually...
And that's already happened.
We haven't been treated fairly in this process. We're trying to do something from a public management standpoint that gives the town a good financial outcome and also works with our employees to give them the best outcome consistent with the town's outcome. And we're trying to take advantage of a statute that would let us do it. But we're into this whole perception dynamic. And I think what you're saying is very accurate, Chuck. I just think it's a shame that once again we've gotten to a point in this town where that's what drives the decision making instead of the actual policy and process.
What's wrong with just talking to everybody first?
But how does this preclude that from happening? I've tried like 3 times to read through this thing from start to finish, and I can't find where it shows that we're not going to work with the employees.
If you adopt the statute first and then go talk to the unions, you're going to have backs up and a much more apprehensive kind of thing.
I think we already have that. I think we already created that by talking about it for the past 6 months.
That's what I think.
And I assure you, I get hit on the street all the time about it. Perfect strangers are talking about it to me that don't even know who I was. After that last meeting,
Has anybody talked to the police
constant.
union? The guy's right there. I mean, has anybody reached out to the police union and talked to them?
We're already under bargaining with the police union, and there's already a known issue in the contract.
Right.
That's
Right.
agreeing with that. Right.
Regardless of this. This is already on the table. We haven't enacted it. It's already on the table. It might as well just be adopted.
I think we have a consensus to honor Mark's commitment to not adopt this until
I did
the...
not commit you.
No,
you would, it's gonna change it.
I'm sorry, that you would advocate for it, right? Sorry, that's much more accurate, thank you. But,
I'm fine with doing that.
yeah.
I'm fine with a week.
Thank you.
I don't think we need a vote. I think.
No, it's fine. We don't need a vote.
Put it on the agenda for
Thank
the
you, Peter.
24th.
Okay. Let's see, what other fun things can we do tonight?
Let's take the item that Mark said should have been the first one, the no operating override.
Would be the next item. Yes.
Oh, that's my annual motion that I've done every year since 2007.
Not this year.
Why, can't I make the motion?
I don't know. Make the motion.
Would you like me
Like
to do an overview or?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay. Quick overview. So, working with a few members of advisory and presenting the projections for fiscal year 17 up to 21 last week on November 4th, it was identified that with some of the focuses that we have on long-term planning to stabilize the tax rate and introducing a trend-based budget for fiscal 17 going forward, we have potential reductions up to $605,000, of which my recommendation is that it's cut proportionately to the bottom line of the omnibus budget, meaning education would have a 61.7% budget cut and then town services would have a 38.3%.
You don't really mean that. You mean
38%?
You mean that 61% of the cut comes from education.
Comes from education, yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, 38%.
I just want, before people started
Budget problems are solved.
peeping in their car and racing down here.
Upset about adopting a statute.
So what that represents to town services is a reduction of about $233,000, of which I already know $100,000 is in how we budgeted in the past for health insurance, since we're on health insurance. In prior years, it was basically taking the budget from the prior year, increasing it by the expected increase. Yet there's been years of what I believe is the increase associated with adult children up to 26 being on health insurance, being in that health insurance budget and just growing every year. So we have about $100,000 there that we can cut right out of the town amount of $233,000. Also in discussions regarding the education
I
budget.
didn't quite follow that.
Yes, sorry.
26-year-olds, are there fewer of them?
Years ago, when Obamacare was enacted, you now had the ability to have 26-year-olds, adult children on your health insurance and your family plan. Once they became 27, they were removed from your plan. At that time, you've seen several people sign up for that family plan that wouldn't have normally been eligible for that family plan anymore. Therefore, you saw an increase over a year or two. As a result, the budget increased proportionately, and each year the budget has increased according to premium increases, rather than reducing that amount out of the budget. So when we look at our actual trends, we can see there's about $100,000 too much in the health insurance budget just because it's been cyclical. It keeps growing upon itself. Okay. One of the things that we're focused on right now is the finance department, myself and Deb Seifrin are working on the trend-based budgets, the actual individual lines for all the departments. We hope to have those out by the end of this month. And then we anticipate departments will be able to submit their information by the end of December so that people can start vetting them. If they come in sooner, I'll be happy to forward them. Advisory is considering a no operating override on November 18th at their next meeting. So our request to the Board of Selectmen tonight is to also adopt a no operating override position for the fiscal year 2017 budget.
So moved.
Second.
I have a question. Probably doesn't have anything to do with the vote. Is this open for discussion?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When you're looking at a 3-year average, and this is coming from a guy that looked at this a lot more in the business world than municipal. If you have a budgeted amount, you can't exceed it unless it's snow or there's one other one that you're allowed to exceed. But so take snow out, take building maintenance as an example. If every year you hit your budget amount, that's all you're going to show for your 3-year average. But if that actually came in 20,000 lower than you should have each year, you're never going to see that data. It's never going to show that you kept short funding yourself.
It'll show it in comparison to your budget line that was voted for 16.
Aren't you looking at actuals anyway?
I'll be looking at 3-year actuals. So it'll be actual.
The only way I'll show an
expenditure.
actual is if you actually spent the money. But if you should have spent the money and you didn't, you held it till the next year, you didn't spend it, but you probably should have. It might have been wise to spend it that year, but you didn't have it.
Or you didn't need to spend it. So this will identify areas where your trend is either stable, you spend about the same amount every year. It'll identify if your trend is going up, a good example is utilities, or if it's going down, if there's less need for a specific.
So I just bring this up while we sit in a room that was 95 degrees when we got here.
Yes, Diane.
Maybe
and I
there was a
already
way
talked.
we could have fixed that had we had the money to fix it.
Exactly.
Your budget over 3 years shows that we never fixed it, and because we never spent the money. So
Or
the
you're gonna
trend would
see-
never show that it should have been higher.
Or you're going to see a trend up because you're spending more on utilities because it's 90 degrees.
On
and
utilities,
your
sure, but
maintenance
that's
cycles.
incremental, where you probably, had you had money in the maintenance budget, you might have fixed a few things that creep up and then 5 years later hit a capital
But that's what we
expenditure.
can do. I mean, she's creating a starting point for the discussion, right? So I mean, that's what we can do through the discussion is,
Right.
you know, you and I and everybody else can throw in those points on every single line item and figure out if we want to
I
try
don't
to
want
make
to go through
adjustments.
every line item.
Well, no, but we will end up going through every line item
Right.
at some point.
I'm
or
just
not.
looking for a way to find the inverse. You can all, it's sure, it's easy to see, all right, you never really hit your budget, we were over budgeting. I'm wondering if there's a way to see the flip side. It's hard to see that data.
Well, roads would be another example of that, right?
Absolutely.
Good example is the turn back each year from departments. If you want to look at an example of a trend, and in some cases you could be saving $40,000 a year in utilities because you switched to LED lighting. That would show within an 18-month change to your lighting system.
Yeah, that'll show in your right.
Right.
Pretty clear how that.
And then we're also working on 10-year capital planning. So capital planning has 10 years forward as well as 10 years back, so that capital program can see what we expended money in the past 10 years on. Is it supposed to be up for renewal? Why isn't it on the chart? As well as in the out years. What items are not included in the town building's regular budget because we've taken it out to the capital process. So it'll start to highlight that.
Just your 90 degrees. So we have a motion and a second on the
Just
table.
further discussion on the motion. I just want to explain why we do this motion, and that is that you can't have an override without the Board of Selectmen putting it on the ballot. So the question of whether there is an override or isn't an override, at the end of the day, falls upon the Board of Selectmen. And so we need to signal to advisory as early as possible whether or not there is an appetite on the part of this board to put overrides on the ballot. And each year we have, since about 2007 I believe, taken the position to advise advisory and to advise the department heads and the budget makers that there hasn't been an appetite on the part of the board to have operating overrides anymore. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Financially, I'm sure that Irene can go on for quite a bit explaining how much how high our tax rate is and how much people pay in taxes and all of that. But at the end of the day, we're the policy-making board that decides on the override piece of the equation, and so we need to put down a marker as to what our intent is. So the purpose of the vote is to find out whether or not there is appetite for an override, and I am hoping that there isn't this year.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Great, good.
Okay. Town administrator reports.
Diane just sighed. That's right.
Oh, assistant town administrator report, no?
I'll just run down through these, and maybe one of the selectmen were going to talk about the Veterans Day event yesterday with somebody.
Sure, happy to talk about that, because Diane Moores and Doug Brody, our veterans officer, and Ray Weiss and Craig Winterfield were marvelous in putting together a very meaningful program for which there was maybe 200 people in attendance. It was very well attended, and we had great speeches from our chair, Mike, and we had a great speech from Chuck, and we had a two-star admiral present who also, he wasn't on the program, but he spoke. There were a lot of feedback that I got from people who attended who said that it was a very moving program and one that meant a lot to them. So thank you to those who put it together. Thank you to Mike and Chuck, and thank you for everyone who attended.
And to you too, Paul, for doing the introduction as well.
It was well done. And Eric Cullum for the keynote speech.
Fantastic. That was really fantastic.
The other event that we had today was the Lieutenant Governor was in town for the Community Compact signing, and Mr. Jaimo was there for the signing, and Mr. Durensis witnessed that. And so that document has been signed.
And it was not. It was actually very nice because we had got the Lieutenant Governor out to town. I don't know how many times she's been to Sherborn on business before, and she asked a lot of questions. We were able to provide her with some information on what our town's like and what our town's needs are and what our town used to be like. We had our State Secretary of Public Safety here. We had our police chief, our fire chief, our CM&D director, our state senator, and our state representative. So a lot of attention paid to this community compact signing and to the town today, which was very nice.
And is she thinking of moving here?
What's that?
Is she thinking of moving here?
Who's going to move here?
Lieutenant Governor.
I don't believe so.
Money in housing stock.
Could I take a moment and thank Dave Williams for getting the community compact into the end zone. I know that took a fair amount of work to get that contract together, and it is going to provide state support on 3 areas: capital planning for our buildings and town assets, a pavement plan for our roads, and an affordable housing piece. So we're not only in partnership with the Commonwealth, but we are actually going to get benefits. And thank Mike for, again, carrying the ball into the end zone and being there and signing it for the community.
Don't say the state never gives us anything. I got a pen with the Commonwealth's logo on it.
You only got one?
Yeah, just one. We can pass it around. Everybody gets to use it once.
Once. It was a good move for the community. It was going to pay dividends to the town, and it provides an important bridge to the state. And for the future, it gives us brownie points on other applications that might come in. So, again, thank you to everybody who's made it happen.
And we were, what, 55th? We got an advance
Yes,
word?
we were number 55 in the state out of 351
But
cities.
I mean, Paul, you gave us advance word, right? You gave us a little bit of a heads up on this, so we got onto this early, which was good, and that's one reason we are 55th out of 365, so that was good.
A couple of other things going on. The personnel board's reviewing all the job descriptions and doing in their classification study that they'd committed to that a while back. We're wrapping up the employee evaluations, and regarding General Chemical, we received a consulting proposal from TRC, which we met with recently to discuss more issues involving General Chemical and procedures. So we distributed that to Mark and Chuck to review first, and then maybe bring that to the full board if it looks like it's something that we want to discuss from, to look at a scope of service for consulting.
Is this for a consultant for the Board of Selectmen, or is it a consultant for the Board of Health?
It's a consultant for the Board of Selectmen for General Chemical.
Thank you.
So for the town, effectively.
Right.
Well, yes.
Right. Regarding the fields of Sherborn, the Board of Health contract for the hydrogeologist is executed and underway, so that's being overseen by Daryl, chair of the Board of Health. So everything with that's going fine. I met with Eric Seary, the chair of the Capital Budget Committee, this morning to look at some process and planning issues. And Thanksgiving, we're planning to be open the day after Thanksgiving for urgent matters if anyone needs anything. I also spoke to the Board of Health chair regarding the ops consultant RFP, and now can finish that draft up and bring that to you guys to review with a proposed RFP for that.
Tim's running a Black Friday sale on burn permits, too.
It's going to be
Then-
leftover turkey?
The building commissioner position was posted, and we had that close on November 6th, and we've already been conducting interviews. And I think that's going fine, and we'll have somebody on.
How many applicants did you get?
About 5.
Okay.
Yeah, not as many as we did last time. But there are really 2 very qualified ones to choose from.
Great.
So that's good. And then, the other matter on the agenda was we received notice that about a sale of an affordable unit at Leland Farms. And in the past, the board has voted for the town administrator to act as a monitoring agent as opposed to actually managing the full sale of that through some sort of auction process. So when you authorize me to be the monitoring agent, I work with town council to follow all the steps. We come up with what the the maximum dollar amount that the unit can be sold for, and then the person who owns that unit works with their attorney to market it, basically. And then at the end, we check to make sure everything's been done and that the market price is what we said that would be within the limits to be able to retain it as an affordable unit. And it's just it's a better process for us in the office instead of us managing the whole auction process.
So
You want that motion?
Yeah.
Are you asking for that motion?
I just wanted to understand
Go make
something
it,
first.
if you want to make it.
Let me ask a question first, Paul, so I understand what we're voting on. The determination is that you would be the monitoring agent for their sale. This is not the same thing as the town giving up its right of first refusal in the event that an affordable buyer can't be found? Or is it?
No, I think that's...
That was mentioned in here. I don't think it.
You still retain the right if it doesn't sell? at the
Well,
state?
what I'm asking is, if this for some reason didn't sell, they couldn't find a buyer at an affordable price, I think at some point they get to try to sell it on the open market.
Right.
And
But
at that point,
has to
do we
come to
still
you.
have the right to step in and save the unit if we want to?
There's a point that it comes to you if
And
it's
this is not that point, so we're not waiving that in any way?
You're not voting to waive any rights. I believe it does come back to you at another time for
Yes, it does.
another vote.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because
We
have
have,
not gone through this process
I
before.
read that somewhere in here, and it's too.
Yeah, it's part of the right of first refusal language.
Okay, good.
Which I can't seem to find right
we,
now.
Page 156, section 1B.
we had town meeting appropriate some funds that we could use in order to exercise that right.
Yes, we still have $350,000 borrowing authorization to
So-
obtain the unit.
If we need to.
If we
You
need to.
need to.
So we
That would be
have,
almost at the end of this process, correct? It would already have been
but right now,
advertised.
it's just, we need a monitoring agent. A, because it's required by the agreement, and B, because we have somebody who's willing to do it. Who maybe should be appointed before he decides, wait a second. this
That's
is
true.
gonna-"
That's true. You're right, Paul. You could appoint town
Okay,
council.
So as long as we're not,
Yeah.
this is not triggering the notice of first refusal, then fine.
No, so I move to appoint David Williams as monitoring agent to oversee the sale of Unit 15, Leland Farms.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded, I think Chuck beat Sean on that one. Sorry, Sean.
I took it.
Okay, any further discussion, all in favor? Aye, thank you, David, for doing that.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Any board members have reports? I think we've heard about veterans and the signing today. Anything else going on? How's the
Stuff
playground
fine.
doing, Sean?
The playground is almost complete.
Excellent.
They, if I was being rude, there's a truck on its way from Georgia that is getting unloaded right now. They ran short on this pour-in-place rubber that we put on about half of the surfacing out there, and that stuff's fabric. It's made in Georgia. They bring it up here, they mix it all up, pour it. They ran short. So the crew's been here all week. I don't know what they've been doing, but they got stuck up here waiting for a truck that apparently just arrived. I think they're unloading it right now.
Wow.
So that'll get finished tomorrow. There was a big hurdle because we almost ran into winter. You know, there's a temperature threshold that you got to hit, and if you don't hit it, it wouldn't have got done. And then, you know, by definition, the playground's not safe because it'd be concrete instead of a cushioned surface. So that's big. That'll get finished tomorrow, and then there's, you know, the final touches. Within the next few weeks, it should be open.
Thank goodness for the warm weather.
Yes, it's been a great fall to finish. And if anyone wants to come out and help, next weekend's going to be a big push to finish. They'll be raking of mulch and some other stuff. Paul put his full day in one of the days during Bill Weekend. Actually, Mark and Stacy did too, I think, right? So.
What are you saying, Sean?
No, I just noticed those too. I was in a daze the whole time. But it was a good time, and it's almost done. There's still a little bit of fundraising going on too. If anyone has any last minute cash,
And
they need to
those are what,
donate
checks,
at the end
checks
of the year.
payable to Sherborn Playground Committee, is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly that, which you can find on the website as well.
It is a registered nonprofit, and there's 1 month left in the tax year.
It is. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else with reports? Chuck?
Yeah, brief report. I had a thorough meeting with my friend at the Department of Natural Resources. He's not sure that there are any specific metrics triggering a more aggressive remediation plan. Encouraged us, urged us to do the isotope testing, was highly skeptical that we can get DEP funding for it. They're in a budget crunch that is enormous. It makes ours look a little less severe. But he thinks it's a great idea and that the town should do it. He's going to explore whether or not he can find DEP funding, but is skeptical that he will be able to.
The downside was that with less than a day's notice, they came out and did the testing.
Yep.
So we would have to, if we were going to do that testing, we would have to be paying somebody to do the whole.
We didn't ask them to put a bottle aside?
That was put forth, but I haven't got a confirmation that anyone did that.
So split samples were not
And
done.
there was also some discussion about the quality of the testing that was going to take place and where they were going to draw the water from, and if it would be from the tap or from the wellhead, because apparently once it goes through the tank.
Rubber bladder tank.
Thank you. Whatever.
That by definition
I
has
don't know
VOCs in it.
That it can evaporate some of it, and so this is why I think this shows why we really need to go the route of the consultant.
And let the consultant pull the samples instead of an old sample that someone else made.
Well, to just make sure it's done properly.
Right.
And then
Right.
Yeah, if DEP is doing it on the sheet.
They also mentioned that we might do the isotope testing, but we could also conversely test for things that come out of a septic system, and rather than the other way around.
To eliminate that.
It's a little easier.
Which is some of what DEP's doing.
I thought they were doing that caffeine
Yeah,
test.
caffeine.
Yeah.
They're going to test for
That's
coffee.
the current test. The point of the isotope testing is to match the chemicals that we have already found in existing wells to see if it's the same source as the chemicals at General Chemical. Because if you get a hit there, then you know it came from General Chemical.
I'd say it's a smoking gun, but I've been admonished.
But I think it's okay that DEP didn't.
Oh, don't use that any more guns.
I didn't admonish you. Somebody else up there.
He's written this all down.
Sorry.
Guns, no guns.
I think the consensus is, though, that it's okay DEP didn't pull the samples for us. Because those are expensive tests. And if a dirty sample's just as good as nothing. So.
We
We're gonna
don't
get
know
there.
if they pulled something or not, right?
No, he didn't have that level of detail.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, great. We've got a warrant here for payroll, town administrator payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? We've got a meeting calendar. Our next meeting is 11/24, and we have 2 sets of minutes. And 11/24 is a Tuesday because we didn't want to meet on Thanksgiving. Two sets of minutes, October 1st and October 15th. Do we have motions to approve those minutes?
So moved?
Second.
You recused from one of them, Paul.
Are the ones they voting have my recusal?
One of yours you recused from, Paul. You recused from the one where we talked about.
What just wasn't in the minutes?
Um,
I need the minutes to reflect recusals.
This was it, Paul. You recused on the first.
Does it say that?
Which was the, no, I don't mean that recused. I thought you recused from voting on this. You said you were going to recuse from voting on this for some reason. Because you disagreed with that or something. So you were not going to vote.
But that's different than...
Then your
there was
recusal.
discussion of health insurance that I recused myself on. It wasn't in the minutes.
Oh, I did put that in there.
So it's...
Let me say, 'cause I only put it in.
Somebody take that. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to wave it in your face, Paul.
Just didn't know what it was. I thought it was minutes.
No. Yeah, no, Diane, you did not put the recusal in. It's in October 15th. It's a discussion on page 3 of health insurance, and you didn't put in the recusal.
Oh, okay.
It's the other one, Paul. It's
I'll add that to it right now.
If you had mine. I think you just took mine.
Can we amend that motion to accept it with changes? Whose motion?
Okay, so the motion is amended, you said, Mark? Sean?
Well, I'm asking, I don't remember whose motion it was.
Sean proposed a friendly amendment to allow Paul to to allow the minutes to reflect that Paul recused from the health discussion as a board member on the 15th of October. Okay? Diane, you got
Yeah.
that? You make that change?
I'll make that change.
Okay, any other changes? Give a second on the motion. Just somebody say second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Excellent.
No, I was not at the October 1st meeting, so I'm not voting on those minutes.
Okay.
And I'm not voting on either
Okay.
minutes.
I guess it's up to us, guys. I think it still passed.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. It was a close one, but we got it through. Okay, good. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Maybe we can get that one done.
Second.
Okay.
Or so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, great, thank you.
Good night.